when ground was broken, and it opens over the weekend of the 18th and the 19th of June in 1927. So what, a year and a half later, coming round to the anniversary of the first race, which actually, believe it or not, was, if I remember rightly, a motorcycle race around here. More than 3,000 workers involved in putting this together, a huge national infrastructure project. 33 left-handed corners, 40 to the right officially, and really has certainly over the last 2.5-3 decades cemented its place in the psyche of motorsport and motoring enthusiasts globally. Bit of a German secret in its early years, although international racing was rife there. But of course, once Formula One went away, it sort of dropped off the radar internationally a little bit, Bruce, and it became this little German jewel, didn't it?
But it did. I mean, there was still the big sports car races there, the 1,000 kilometres, the Nurburgring. But I know what you mean. But the thing about it was that junior categories still went to play this, and lots of Formula 3 drivers got to know it. Of course, Hockenheim cornered the market after 1977. But the fact is, the circuit has always had the old-timer, incredible weekend, more classic and historic racing cars you can shake a stick at, and all the national championships went to play. But of course, they were playing largely on the Grand Prix circuit that opened in the mid-80s. But the fact of the matter is, this circuit still exists. It's more than you could possibly dream of. And you were talking about people in the States thinking this was a madman's plaything, not realising it was the real thing. I wonder how many of those not only have obviously raced on it, but have in the virtual world have come across to try it in the flesh. This is one of the beauties. This is the circuit you can look at, you can ogle, but by golly, you could turn up and drive the thing. It's phenomenal, because you think most circuits, they're closed off to the public apart from the racers. So it's just even better than you could possibly imagine.
Yeah, it's a good point, Bruce, with the tourist fare and the tourist driving available. You pay your €30 or whatever it is now. It's much more expensive than even when I first went there, which is only 2006. Well, I said only 2006, of course. That's 16 years ago now, isn't it? It just seems like yesterday. At RSL_studio for the Twitter today. Thanks for all of you who have already joined in. The Marla Racing team, Agustin Canapino, the Argentinian superstar in both real and virtual driving, had a fabulous result, the best result for Ferrari ever in the IMSA iRacing E-Series last night at, Thursday night at VIR is where we were. Augustin with the colours of Juncos Racing, for whom he raced a Cadillac prototype DPI in IMSA last season, and with some effect as well. Augustin also a multiple touring car champion in the real world, and no mean sim racer. He's picked it up quickly, did it in his youth, went into the real world, has come back and has had, really, to be honest, Bruce, a wonderful DNLS season. He's done his bit, and the team spirit that he has built with a driver that he's never met in Alex Arenas from Bilbao has been extraordinary, and they have certainly been the team to watch.
Well, they're topping the championship, and John, this is their record. Second, third, first from pole and third. That's not bad across 4 rounds, that consistency. But I remember Alex Arana had more experience of sim racing, and he described Agustin as a monster, someone who simply, you tell him what to do and he goes and does it. And that certainly was the impression. I remember speaking to Juncos Racing at the Daytona 24 in 2019, and they just couldn't believe how applied he was to the task. That was in the metal, in the flesh, if you will, but the way he's adapted to sim racing, lots of drivers have, but he seems to just be told what to do, he goes and does it. But he's not making mistakes, and that's the key. Whether he'll make a mistake in qualifying, that's another key. At the moment, it's the Marla Racing team fastest of all by nearly a second. So clearly going very well in that as well.
So coming down to the last minute or so, lap that you're on, you'll be able to complete. Marla Racing Audi from Williams Esports, Sammy Matty Trogan, another superstar from the real world, rally cross driver, also had a win this season in the DNLS. and the Williams Esports team just 0.8 of a second. 0.8 of a second in 77 corners of the Nordschleife. Never mind the bit of the Grand Prix circuit that we use as well. I mean, it's just extraordinary course at the top of the times. Sami Mäki, Scandinavian driver, should have had his first in the metal run in a GT3 car as well by now, but of course circumstances have prevailed and stopped that happening. Trojan on an early part of his lap, just at the moment heading down into the foxhole. Still the shadow's quite long, despite the fact that, what time is it in Germany? 1:45 actually. So looking great again. The first round of the DNLS did have a bit of fog in the early part of the season. We don't get rain in iRacing, but the sunshine, the cloud cover and potential fog hanging around is modelled on weather data appropriate for the time of the year that you program it in. And
so
also
it's 23 degrees air temperature and nearly 40 track temperature.
Wow.
So those round black things, they might need a bit of attention today, more so than in the past. That's very warm.
Remember, in the GT3 category, you don't have any choice but to change all 4 tyres when you come in for a pit stop, unless you don't put fuel in. If you're just getting a fix, you don't have to. But otherwise, as soon as you put the fuel nozzle in, you've got to do tyres as well. But we have seen a variety of strategies, Bruce, in terms of where these pit stops will come. There are regulations, which we won't go into the detail of now, about who's got to drive, but you've got to have 2 driver changes, which has kind of mixed the strategies up a bit in the last couple of races.
It does, and what I had forgotten, but just quickly flicking through my results, do you remember that Agustin Canapino was leading, or was he second, but he was taken out on the opening lap of, I think, the race they came through to 3rd place in. So, but the fact was they fought back from right at the tail of the field, but they therefore, because of that, because they had to have damage corrected and fixed, they came in at the end of the opening lap. So that totally threw their entire procedure through the course of the race. But then last time out, we saw yet more different versions of how the teams interpret the best run. But the thing about it, we also have full professional race engineers working for these teams too. They're waiting to get their racing season on the real circuits to happen. They're keeping their hands in. And in fact, if you go to the VCO website, great interview in that with an Audi engineer. And it's just, they're enthralled. It's Stefan Gugger. So he's keeping his hand in. So the engineers are still learning, much as the drivers are still learning stuff. They'll reapply to racing in the flesh when it comes around. So nobody is being idle, and it's certainly raising the standard of sim racing too, because the drivers who erstwhile just raced on their sims at home are now getting full professional works race engineers helping them with their setup, but also being helped by them as well. It works both ways, John.
It's Bruce Jones, I'm John Hindhaugh, coming to the end of qualifying, and it looks like the qualifying maestro, Agustin Canapino, has put that Marl Racing Audi on pole position once again. He's already got the best time of a 7 minutes 50.686, and he's going to be pretty close on this as he comes through onto the long Dottiger straight with about just on a minute to run to the end of the lap, and that's what I always gauge that on, Bruce. If you're out of the Gallows Hill double apex, triple apex, really right-hander onto there with about a minute to your target time, you're going to be close to it. Absolutely VMAX for the Audi, just sitting just under 8,000 revs, 6th gear, 170 miles an hour through into the final chicane at Tiergarten, and now onto the short run. This is going to be quick. He may even be quicker than his pole time. 47, 48, 49, 50. Oh, just a little bit over by less than a tenth of a second. But two extraordinary laps. Either of those laps from Augustin Canapino or Bruce Jones would have put him ahead of Sami Matti Trogan. But here's Sami now coming to finish his lap, and he's going to be close as well. I think he's just a little bit too far back on the splits to make this one, but two fabulous laps by Canapino.
Nothing there surprises me, John. That is the point. In the very first round of the championship, and slightly in the second, he'd make a few slip-ups in qualifying. Come the race, he's a real race animal. But Sami Matti Trogan, he won round 2 with Dominic Steib, and I reckon he's got a few splits that are quicker. Yes, he has, as I look across the many, many splits you get in 25 kilometres of a race circuit. Yes, 25 kilometres. And at this point, there aren't many more mistakes you can make as you come into the final sweepers onto the start-finish straight. But it's going
to be tight.
Very tight indeed. Let's see what time. The target time, 7 minutes 50.686. Can that be bettered by the Finn?
I think it's going to be very close indeed. 49. Yes, a 49.8. Wow. Super last, 3 splits on the run to the line. And the Williams Esports Audi with Sami Matti Trogan has snatched away pole position by the 8/10ths that he was trailing Augustin Canapino. So that's a 1.6 second gain on his second flying lap for Sami Matti. Impressive stuff. Now, third position, Philip Eng for BS Competition, another one of the super teams. They were the team that won the 24-hour race, of course. Manfilter Team HTP have the AMG in fourth position ahead of Team BMW Bank and Bruno Spengler at the moment. But all of these laps are yet to be completed, and next to the line will be the number 35, Mikkel Jensen. Valkenhorst, he's 4.2 seconds away from that new pole position time as he comes onto the Grand Prix circuit for the run to the line by the TUV tower on the right-hand side. He's not going to be on pole, but does he improve? He gets a 52.6.
Goes third.
Goes into third. Very impressive. Very impressive. So that was around about 2.5 seconds that he trimmed off. BMW Bank still coming round as well. The dark grey car. Who's next through? Race Union. Race Union sitting in 16th position, 6.5 seconds off pole.
Just a thought for you, John.
This is quick.
Majority of these drivers are finding nets between 1.5 and 2 seconds on their outlet. Maybe Canapino, who actually was 1/10 of a second slow, was just absolutely spot on in his first.
Yes.
But the fact is he's 0.8 of a second down in the Mahler Racing Team Audi. It's Audi. It's this other Audi coming in third, Florian Bodan. He goes in just outside the top 10 into 12th. But
improvement though.
Canapino did make a slight mistake on his lap.
But that again, 2.5 seconds he found on the second flyer. Remember, you can go round the infield loop and then start a first timed lap, and that's what I think everybody's been doing to get these couple of laps in, get some heat in the tyres. See who's still out on the circuit at the moment. As it stands, Williams Esports from Mahler Racing Team, Audi from Valkenhorst BMW, from BS Competition BMW, from Manfilter Team HTP, from BMW Team BMW Bank, then from Schnitzelarm Racing, the Schnitzel restaurant chain, Marcel Markovic is in 7th position. 8th for David Griesner for Adrenaline E Motorsports, one of the early cars out. Team Vodafone, Get Speed, AMG. Fabian Schiller in 9th, and the top 10 made up by Max Hoffer for Phoenix Racing eSport. And they are only 4.5 seconds away from the pole sitter. So just waiting to see if there are any other laps to be completed around the circuit before we call time. As into the pit lane, just dodging in the back way, it's the Audi of Race Union SP9, Florian Baudin. And hi to Connery this morning, who's back with us. Did wonderful work in the DL24 and on the pictures for us again today. Part of the Race Spot team, .tv team, and helping out here with the VCO powered DNLS with our friends from Germany. So we're told now that that is the end of qualifying. So what I told you just a few moments ago is how they will line up. 0.8 of a second between Williams Esports for Audi and the Marler Racing team. It's an all Audi front row from 2 BMWs. Valkenhorst number 35, BS Competition 189. Then the classic Manfilter coloured Team H. Now, will they be in the yellow Manfilter colours this week? Because Team HTP haven't necessarily been running the 48 car. Phil Ellis will start that one. Bruno Spengler's alongside him for Team BMW Bank. Then Schnitzelarm Racing and Adrenaline on the next row, the fourth row. Fifth row, Vodafone Team Get Speed from Phoenix Racing. Team WRT 2, Kenneth Gulbrandsen has Race Union, Florian Bodan for company on row 6. Row 7 is Jesse Krohn in the 108 VRS Coanda Sim Sport machine from Valkenhorst, the 34 car. David Pittard won't be happy with 14th position, 5 seconds off the lead, but there's a huge gaggle of cars between sort of 4.5 and 5.5 seconds, Bruce Jones, in the middle of the top 10 down to the middle teens.
Yeah, exactly that. I was watching to see if anyone would pop out of that in those final few runs, but apart from Agustin Canapino being incredibly even between his 2 laps and Sami Matti-Trojan tailing him and going ahead, everyone else was gaining a bit, but not in great leaps and starts. So that's be fantastic for the race. In fact, you have to go down to Jesse Krohn in 13th overall to be 5 seconds down, but it's still close. The next half a second comes the next 5 cars behind him, down to Richard Westbrook in 17th place. So it's going to be really, really tight. But can anyone do anything about those Audis that are first and second for Williams Esports and the championship leaders, the Marler Racing team? They are the creme de la creme on the Nordschleife.
Porsche Cup pole position will be Asher Racing. Marcus Jirak did the time there, and he was only 12 seconds off the overall pole. Had about 3/10 on Sim RC Cup 2, so that's 227 from 226. Then German Sim Racing with Keno Buschmann from Phil Schalowski for Black Falcon in 4th position. Then WS Racing, Sim Racing Academy, Project GT 1.de, H2 Performance, Huber Motorsport, BWT Mucker and Race Union. That's all 11 of the 911 Cup class. The GT4 Club Sport Caymans, the 718s, Carl Janssen, Course Sim Racing on pole by just 0.3 of a second from Zorg Rennsport, Christian Bug, Patrick Hahn for Huber Racing, Ad Hoc Gaming by My Day next up, and they were all within a couple of seconds of each other. Team RSO in 5th, Sim Racing Channel Black in 6th, and in the Audi TCR class, Sim RC TCR with Paul there for Diogo C. Pinto. He, I would suspect, is the highest iRacing driver in here this weekend. If not, he'd be certainly one of them. Michael Schuttler for Team Heusingfeld, the 404, was half a second away. Dennis Neidhart from DOT XE Esport, then Core Sim Racing, that's the 403 version of that team, and Oliver Ackerman makes up the top 5 for T3 Motorsport. So that is how they will line up. 3 hours of racing. Did you notice any I had a quick flick through, Bruce, the driver briefing notes. Any major changes that we need to be aware of today?
No, they all seem to have really settled down. I was super impressed at the start of this championship about how unbelievably detailed and clear they were. We've seen a few little tweaks and fiddles basically between rounds 1 and 2, 2 and 3, but it seems rock solid at the moment. So whatever formula they've got, they've really got on top of it and got it to work very, very well indeed. So you do get, there is a number of incident points that will get you a stop and hold penalty or a stop and go penalty, and that in the past has been just changed slightly, but I think we're still at the moment at we were down at 18 for the 24-hour race, and then every 5 after that. But these guys, frankly, Bruce, are so good that seldom, for the sharp end of the field at least, that seldom comes into play. Starting grid then, just to once again run through those.
We've got the Audis at the front in Porsche in the Cup class. It's the Asher Racing car from Sim RC, and then going down through Cup 3, which is the Porsches, it's Core Sim Racing, and then behind those cars it's the Audis that will come up next, and a dozen of the Porsche 718s with 4 motors Bioconcept. Robert Hager qualifying in 12th position. SP3T is the TCR, Sim Racing, the Sim RC rather, TCR from Tim Heusingfeld, DOT, Core, T3, Zorg Rennsport, Team Nurburgring with René Kirchhoff and Leipert team yellow. Some good drivers in the TCR, so don't, if this is your first time watching, don't neglect to watch those guys. We will have the split racing, the split starts, of course, so there will be effectively 4 starts, not 4 of around about 50, of course, only 50. As the Porsche safety car pulls in, headlights flashing from the pole sitter. He's brought them very slowly, then he goes now, and he's immediately pulled out a car's length, and from the outside of the front row, Canapino pulls in the Marla car, trying to get a drift, and they go 3 wide into the first corner. That's an extraordinary look. The tails away shot, brilliant stuff from Connery, our director today, as the whole field was spreading out into the braking area, tricky downhill braking area as well, but the pole man, Sammy Matty Trogan for Williams Esports, he's getting away from Marla. Philip Ellis in the darker coloured car, so not the traditional bright yellow man filters car, but that is the HTP machine in 3rd, from Philip Eng in 4th for BS competition. Then Mikkel Jensen out onto the Grand Prix circuit. Remember, we're using the AMG Mercedes-Benz Arena, the Haug Hook as it's affectionately called. We use the longer version here. Can't do that in the 24 hours because they've got the paddocks for the support classes and races there. So those cars now on the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit, and we'll let them settle down as we wait for the Cup class to come through. This is the first of 2 Cup classes, both Porsche Cup classes, and this the Carrera Cup or Super Cup cars, which have really morphed into wonderful endurance racing cars as well, both in the real world and in virtual. So the pole sitter for that category, pulling them round now, and he has to bring them round for Asher Racing, Martin Asher, and then the Sim RC Cup cars down towards the first corner. Get a little bit of connection issues here. It's going to make things difficult for all the drivers as they're ghosting in and out. It's the first time we've seen that in this championship. Particularly busy network this morning, not sure why that should be, but it looks as though Asher in the dark car with the stylized AR on the side for Asher Racing, that's the easy way to pick that one out, leads away in 2nd place. That's the Sim RC car with the similar logo on the side. Yes, it is, with the yellow though. 276 in 2nd place. As they head down towards the hairpin on the short run down. Now the Cayman's coming through. Already 2.5 minutes since we got the green flag. And here comes the 12 car Cayman 718 GT4 Club Sport Field. And as they now come to their green light, controlled by their pole sitter, Carl Janssen for Core. Very difficult for the drivers. They'll be seeing that drop out. Looks like there's an Audi in the pit lane as well. Yes, there is. There's a TCR car starting from the pit lane. So that car, and they turned around right at the beginning for the 718 Club class. And that's going to leave, I think. Now, who was that who got turned around there?
I think it might have been Christian Bug from second place.
Yes.
That really helps Carl Janssen. It was behind him. He was the pole man, so he should have a very decent lead now, because obviously everyone had to avoid what's going on behind. I think it was Christian Bug who rotated. 2 cars
starting from the pit lane. Elia Earhart in the Car Collection Sim Racing 33 Audi, and the Yannick Danish number 1 for Zorg Rennsport ETCR from the TCR class. So I've just picked those 2 up now, showing in the pit lane. So whether they had problems in qualifying or whether they've had problems since, not sure. But they are shown in the pits at the moment, as through comes the TCRs. Diogo Cipinto for SimRC TCR from Schuttler, Team Heusingfeld. Pretty clean start as they head down to the first corner. And these cars have given us, this class, Bruce, has given us tremendous entertainment with 3, 4, 5, sometimes 6 and 7 of them all line astern, almost as if they were hitched together.
Yeah, and what we see when they take that massive long run down Dottinger back at the end of the lap, even if your last 2 in a group of 6 have fallen back slightly, they get the benefit of a tow of 4 cars and they catch them up again. So you're quite right, we had half a dozen cars at least for the first hour, nose to tail. Absolutely brilliant in the TCR class.
Well, Get Speed Performance, Fabian Schiller, disconnect right when the race was about to start. He's had to throw over to his teammate who was standing by for the Get Speed machine.
So that's Philip Noller. They've been well placed in the championship, so bit of a hiccup for them.
This is one thing that does happen in the real that doesn't happen in the real world, that does happen here. But that's why, Bruce, they all have a second driver. Normally at the start of the race, you probably wouldn't have second man in the car, second driver in the car, suited, booted and ready to go, because it's an hour away. Maybe after a couple of laps you might get him in, but you know, at this point you've always got to have somebody sitting on a rig just in case there's a rig problem or indeed a disconnect problem, and that's exactly what happened for Team Get Speed.
Well, let's just hope that Philip Noller wasn't sitting there with a donut in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other, thinking, let's enjoy the start. Imagine the scramble there. But I tell you what, I've been watching the gaps at the front. Sammy Matti-Trogen just under a second clear. Agustin Canapino keeps chipping away. It's exactly a second clear now. Philip Ellis, the best of the BMWs, in third, and Philip Eng, who won't like being the second of the BMWs, in fourth place. But it really is very tight indeed, nose to tail in the GT3 class. Sammy Matti-Trogen leading the way, but where's the next move going to come? Well, I think we know at the end of that long straight back towards the pits.
So Trogen then just 9/10 of a second ahead of Canapino, and the driver's trying to settle into this first racing lap. Got full live timing and scoring for you on the page at radio-show.co.uk, and you can get the strategy screen up as well. The little graph towards the right hand top corner there will give you the analysis and all kinds of extra information, exactly as we see it here in the booth at RSL_studio. If you'd like to drop Bruce and I a line onto the Dottinger then for the first time, some weaving around the red, white and blue BMW sitting down in, that's the Valkenhorst 35, isn't it? So it was the Schnitzelarm car behind that he's trying to break the toe on, the yellow Mercedes, as they come down towards the famous Bilstein crossover bridge, which is that little kink just over the brow. So fast, right into the entrance to the final serpentine run onto the start-finish line. And it will be Sammy Matti-Trogen who goes through in the lead to complete the first lap.
But the person who made the move there, John, was Philippe Eng, who went past Philippe Ellis. So the BMW is now up into third place for BS competition. The black Mercedes is down to fourth after that brilliant start from Philippe Ellis. But the thing that struck me, it doesn't matter which round of the championship, Philippe Eng normally gains 1 or 2 places into the opening corner. But if you recall, he was pushed really wide on the outside line, or out over the white line at the outside, fell from third back to fifth. He's now trying to resurrect his hope. So up into third place he goes now. Agustin Canapino just a little bit in front of him. So as long as Philippe Ellis can drop away from Philippe Eng's tail, the BMW will start to catch that second place Audi. But all along, Sami Matti-Trogan, the front, eking his way clear. 1.14 seconds now. Not much in it at all, but he's still in the important place at the lead.
And Bruce, barely 4 seconds away from his qualifying time with a slow run onto the start-finish line. That was a very good... he's got a clear circuit ahead of him as he does that, but even so, Martin Asher continues to lead in the Porsche number 227 for Asher Racing, the black car with the red accents and the AD script on the roof and the sides. Claudius Veed second for Sim RC Cup 2 is a half a second or there about behind as he's now on the Dottinger Hurt, the black and yellow car with similar livery with the AR on it. I said AD there because it does remind me of the old livery that RML used to run, the Mike's company.
Just look, John, how close this is in the battle for Cup 2. And in the 2 classes behind, no more than 1.1 seconds between the first and second in each of those classes. But right now in the Cup 2 class, 0.4 of a second is the gap between Martin Asher and Claudius Veed. And don't forget, Claudius dropped off his tail a little bit in the opening few corners. But right now, on his tail, really, really tight at the end of the opening lap.
It's Bruce Jones, I'm John Hindhaugh, and it's live competition from the Nurburgring Nordschleife, round 5 of the 2020 Nurburgring Langstrecken Series, NLS, the new name for what we used to call VLN, although it's still effectively a VLN championship in the real world. And their first race just about a month away over that. VCO Virtual Competition Organisation pulling together some great resources and really bringing a new level of accessibility and professionalism to what was already a very, very high level and competitive series, and basically drawing together several strands of the sim and the full metal world, as Bruce calls it, which I've stolen from you there, Bruce, and press releases, photo shoots, interviews, you name it, it's all here for this series now, and has really, I think, provided a really important bridge from the virtual to the real world. Don't think that all these people have just popped up overnight, by the way. They've been racing in the virtual world for very many years, and people certainly like those at the front of the field for Williams Esports, they've been in this for a while. Marla Racing Team, that's another Williams Esports offshoot, BS competition, etc, etc. All of these professional sim racing outfits have been doing this for quite some time, as have their drivers. So to have incorporated some of the real world drivers and manufacturers and sponsors is where it's really taken off in the last 3.5 months or thereabout. Martin Asher, who's been a real star in the Cup 2 category for Porsche 911 Cup cars. Not the easiest of cars to drive, these, in the real world or in sim racing, ask anybody. But the challenge gratefully accepted and manfully accepted by Martin Asher. Get the setup right. I'm told they are a very, very satisfying car, Bruce Jones, to drive quickly.
Yes, we had a whole host of drivers mentioning the fact. Someone, I think you actually in an interview, I can't think with who, said, why did you not enter the top class?
Yes.
It was more fun for me to take the challenge of racing a Porsche 911, and we know in real life that a lot of people still find a Porsche 911 a car that is on its own in terms of racing. It's tricky, but the challenge of getting it right is something that a lot of pro full-time race drivers like to do. And I love your phrase just then, the bridge, because before we had the parallel universe of real-world racing, full metal, if you want to go to that phrase again, and sim racing, and we're having drivers crossing both ways. Pro drivers like Sammy Matty-Trogan, who's leading the race by next to nothing now, really got Canapino. Oh, sorry, that's the second place car. That's Canapino, who's got Eng all over him. But the fact that some are crossing one way and some the other, it's not closed shop at all. And I think we're going to need a couple of bridges shortly, because it's going to be a lot of traffic going both ways. And certainly for a lot of metal racers, real world racers, they now know there will be no such thing as a weekend off anymore. They won't have a gap between any races. They can cross from one side to the other. You can go from real racing to sim racing and back again according to their calendars. But I think for a lot of people, they're going to become full-time racing widows as their other half decides that they can race every weekend of the year, and maybe some midweek events as well, John.
Well, and you heard the issue of Charles Leclerc. His significant other had to buy a months-long subscription to Twitch to be able to send him a message to say, I'm standing at the door and I can't get in. Can you come? Can you stop what you're doing?
What do you mean it's a 24-hour race?
Yes, exactly. So, second and third, closing back up together. Augustin Canapino then from Philip Eng. And sitting in behind them, the slightly darker coloured car is Phil Ellis for the Manfilter team, HTP Winward. The American team, which has ensured the future of the long-running in as HTP and in various other form, of course, of HTP in Altendienst is where they are based in Germany. Down from Leipzig, and beautiful part of the world down there. And Christian Horn-Ardel, who's running that team in the real world. Bryce and Russell Ward, IMSA racers of some repute down through the years. It seemed very long ago that they were club racers, and they've really taken to this and backed up their racing involvement with getting involved in running teams. And now HTP Winward merges together on both sides of the Atlantic. His battle for second, huge amount of draft from Philip Eng there as he drafted up to Canapino. But that Audi, Bruce Jones, is very quick indeed in a straight line. And even with the draft that the Z4 was getting, and Philip Eng, by the way, puts in a new fastest lap last time around, even with the draft the Beamer was getting, couldn't even get alongside that white and green Audi in second place.
That's precisely why he tried to do it once he got into the stadium section there. But all along, don't forget, it was a three-car draft because Philip Ellis tucking it behind in the Mercedes as well. But you're quite right, going on to Dottinger-Hoa, the Audi just goes off like an arrow off a bow. But the BMW is close enough to be in the mix. And we've seen also the Mercedes, that their performance comes in different areas around the track. But this, to me, sums up GT3 racing. At least three manufacturers duking it out. The opening round actually had Ferraris finishing first and third. We haven't seen so much of that team since, but it's great to have the manufacturer variety. But I think the thing I've always found in these 3-hour races is the fact that the Audi seems to be fleetest of foot when it comes to qualifying, but when you get to the race, the BMW comes on stronger and stronger. Mercedes not quite been at the sharp end, but it must be said that Philip Ellis is doing a fantastic job for the Manfilter HTP team. And I love the combination riding on board at the moment with Philip Ellis. Just as they complete the time on the Grand Prix circuit, and right now they cross that white line, out into the country they go. This is where it gets harder to overtake, easier to make a mistake, of course. You might be able to profit, but these drivers are making fewer and fewer as they head around the Nordschleife. First round of the championship, people did make mistakes, but right now we're getting guys who are nailing it, John, absolutely nailing it.
And it's not just the speed though, Bruce, is it? As you've pointed out many times, it is the absolute metronomic consistency and the precision on a circuit with simply so many corners and so easy. As anybody who's been on this track on whatever platform you use, getting a clean lap in itself, even if it's slow, you think to yourself, I haven't hit the barrier that time around. I've done all right. And these guys, up to 24 hours. And we had people doing 4 hours at a stretch in the virtual 24 hours. It was an extraordinary thing to see.
Now, another factor, these opening laps, the only laps in the race when they haven't got lapped cars to lap up ahead of them, the 3 junior classes will start to come into play. So it's not just about keeping the speed, keeping your position. It's about knowing when to make a pass and when to back off for a corner or two, hoping you won't be passed by a rival who's tucked under your rear wing. But you've got to have an element of caution in this. If you're super bold, you are going to come unstuck unless all your stars are in alignment. Right now, it must be said, Sami Trogan's having the easy drive, but even without anyone right on his tail, he's nearly 2 seconds to good. We've seen him just in the last few seconds just cutting corners, kicking up the dirt. In second place, Agustin Canapino would love not to have pressure from behind. That's stopping him catching up with Sami Trogan. But these guys are right on the edge.
Settling into I say settling into the pace. They don't. They're just on the pace straight away. First, second and third in the Cup 2 category. Sim RC, Claudius Veed in that Asher Racing livery, but racing for Sim RC. German Sim Racing in third position. Top 3, barely 10 Porsche 911 lengths between them as they head onto the Hatzenbach for their third lap. And Martin Asher leading then from the 276 in second position. Third in that run, as I say, Keanu Buschmann for the German Sim Racing team. And these 3 at the moment, I'm looking at the splits as I'm sure you are, Bruce, and it is fractions, not of a second, fractions of tenths of a second between these guys at the moment. They're race spot rear wing on that yellow and black car, and they are literally matching each other corner by corner, and hundreds and thousandths between them.
Yeah, so you get excited if you suddenly see one of these top 4 drivers has set the fastest sector time, but there are so many. Well, I've got 12 sector splits around the lap on my timing screen, but you're quite right, we're not talking tenths of a second, we're not even talking hundreds, it's largely thousandths of a second is the difference between them. So much as Philip Ellis in sector number 4, for sake of reference, set the fastest sector of anyone, it's about 4 hundredths of a second quicker than anybody else. That's nothing, of course. He then loses at the next one. So he's still in 4th place, still setting quick times, but we are trading what we talk hundredths of a second between them right now. That's why second, third and fourth as they go through the carousel are just absolutely nose to tail.
This is allowing our leader Sami Trogan to build up what, in the terms of the early part of this 5th round of the NLS, digital NLS powered by VCO, it is the Mahler 3 Stunden round 5, and that's, in the context of this race, 1.8 seconds is actually comfortable for Sami Trogan at the moment. Certainly not in a comfort zone at all. Augustin Canapino with Philip Eng and Philip Ellis sitting behind him. Those 3 are within, let's call it, a second.
Yeah, and just looking at that gap, just a whisker over a second, second, third and fourth, Canapino, Eng, Ellis. Then there's a nearly 6 second gap to Mikkel Jensen, but he's got 2 drivers within a second of him. He's got Marcel Marchewitz in 6th place in that yellow Schnitzelarm Racing Mercedes. Then Bruno Spengler, heard of him before? I certainly have. He's in 7th and he's doing his utmost, but most of the overtaking does not come out on the Nordschleife, where the cars can leave the ground from time to time over the rises. It comes when they use that incredible toe they can get up the Dottinger Hoa towards the end of the lap. And of course, as we saw last time around, that's what Philip Eng in 3rd place plans to do. He plans to use the toe to catch and maybe past the driver in 2nd place, Agustin Canapino. But Canapino, they're kicking up the dirt, trying everything to find another few hundreds just to make sure that toe isn't realised until, the latest possible moment up that long straight back to the end of the lap.
If this is your first time watching Virtual World Racing, just to underline the amount of work that goes in, I was talking to a factory driver from the real world this week about the IMSA series at VIR, and that is just, I think, 3 miles VIR, and they were telling me the minimum amount of practice for that event to get to the point where they would have felt comfortable about representing their brand, it would be 3 6-hour sessions on consecutive days, and 3 full 6-hour sessions at a time. Side by side for second into Teagard. There was a little touch there, and there's a bigger touch after that, and Canapino comes off the worst. There was a side by side entrance to the uphill left-hander. Canapino pulls out of the danger zone and then waits very gentlemanly for cars to go by. He'll limp that Audi, and that's the series leader in the fence. Huge repercussions for the championship. Let's have a look at the VCO replay of that. The BMW coming round the outside onto the grass just after Bilstein, and then a tiny little touch side to side, and as the BMW came back on, nails the right rear of Canapino's car. So Philip Eng there onto the grass and just trying to hang on to it, not suggesting, Bruce, for a moment that was deliberate by Eng. I think he was just struggling to keep the car going in a straight line and couldn't slow down enough. There was a bit of weaving going on, trying to break the toe as they came to the Bilstein Bridge. He swung out from underneath the back of the Audi. Yeah, there was a tiny little touch, the tiniest of touches that sent Eng onto the track, but it was the rejoin that had the problem.
It was the fact he was on the grass on a couple of points, through the kink, and then the second, just having a replay, and it was the second time. Yes, there was a bit of side by side. The BMW totally on the grass, rejoined the track, hit the rear corner of the Audi, which went to 360 down the barriers, and then lost with a crumpled rear wing and probably suspension damage too, you'd have to suggest, John. Rejoined, it had to wait for the traffic in about 10th place to limp back to the pits. But Philip Eng in the wars, but he continues. 2.2 seconds down on the race leader, but we've got a whole host of cars in the pits.
Yeah, and they'll burn some time here to do some repairs. Although we have seen Canapino and his teammate Alex Arana do a short run at the start, and that was forced on them by an accident as well. I seem to remember going up the hill at Breitscheid, was it, or at one of the corners coming up the hill on the far side of the track in 2 races ago, and they managed to make that work for them, if memory serves, Bruce.
They did. They were sort of forced into adapting, but it was down to the fact you don't have to have all your damage repair done at any point, one single point. You can share it out between your pit stops, but certainly that was probably a better drive than their win, it has to be said. But phenomenal. So let's see if we can have another fight back from Canapino and Arana, but right now, not where they want to be, sitting in the pits.
Hello to Dave Alcock, who's tuned in today, one of our real world fans as well. So many real world fans using these online races for a bit of quote-unquote normality in these strange times. And so many of you also saying, well, listen, I'm wandering about, I'm doing a bit of gardening at the moment, tweeting in at RSL_studio, I'm listening to you and Bruce talking about this, I can hear the cars in the background. It's real as far as I'm concerned. And
I do this as a break from gardening, actually.
You've got quite a lot of gardening to do, Bruce, in fairness. Yes.
Put my head in the noose.
Cup 2 class for Porsches. The 911 Cup cars. Still first, second and third. Almost like the opening rounds of a heavyweight boxing match here. They're sort of jabbing and dancing around a little bit, trying to find where the strengths and weaknesses of their competitors around them are. All the cars are the same, but setup, of course, is free. And you can make a big difference to how the car feels, particularly in the long run. That's the thing, you need to be consistent. There's a little more flexibility in terms of your tactics in the classes outside the GT3s, but really, it's all going to be down to how quick and consistent you're going to be, and they're going to get some traffic coming through at the moment. That looks like the car collection, one of the car collection Audis coming through, possibly the car, the 33 I think it was, that started at the pit lane at the start of the race. So they'll be coming the 20, yeah, indeed it is Alea Earhart for car collection in the tradition, what I would call the traditional car collection colours of white and sky blue. They do
John,
run red car as well.
A second. Hold your horse. I think that might be Alex Arana who's taken over the Marla Racing Team Audi. I'm just waiting to see. It could be the car that's had repairs and come back out. It's just in the background of the shot. These three still covered by a second and a half. White Audi with the blue flash on the nose. If it says Marla, then that is the car that is in 20th place, that was in second place, had the clatter into the barrier. I think it's just agonising.
No, you're right.
You're right. Eyes to pick him out.
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on. I'd forgotten about the cars that had the problems. So Alex Arana then has taken over early in the race for what was the second place car, and we've seen them make this work though. Short stint by one driver, then a double by Alex, and then Augustin to finish the race off at the end. Meantime, other traffic concerns for Valkenhorst and Mikkel Jensen as they go past a TCR, one of the red and white Audis, sitting just off the pace at the moment. Schnitzelarm and Valkenhorst still battling. Now, the last time we saw a Valkenhorst and a Schnitzelarm car battling together, they were the other way around, and we were looking for a very long time at the logo of Schnitzelarm, Specialist Schnitzel Restaurant Group. And we were looking at the fact that
by the moment.
Oh God, it was killing me. It was absolutely killing me.
Just a bit of housekeeping. You know how in motor racing and life you can 1 minute be doing well, 1 minute not. Mirko Bortolotti, not so long ago, celebrating victory in the 12 hours at Monza. Now he's at the back of the pack, 60th overall, stuck in the pit. So that's one of the Team WRT Audis going nowhere fast, I'm afraid.
Yeah, WRT, one of the powerhouses of GT3 racing, Vincent Voss's team. Also their engineering arm builds all of the space frame chassis for the Fun Cup series, that brilliant classic VW Beetle shaped racing car with a non-turbocharged 4-cylinder Audi engine, sequential gearbox. And I love the fact in that championship, in the VW Fun Cup, at some of the bigger races, they have a separate class for those teams who take passengers for the whole race, because you can't have two seats. It's just extraordinarily brilliant.
It'll never catch on, John. Oh, hold on a second.
Yeah, problem is that one of the teams has this guy called one N Grist, who seems to do an awful lot of the passenger rides and call the corners for their less experienced drivers at the Spa 24. In fact, they do a 25-hour race there, don't they?
Right, we've had a change overall. We're looking at the battle for fourth and fifth. Schnitzelarm, Marcel Marshevitz getting a fabulous tow on the Walkenhorst BMW, but Mikkel Jensen may be able to prevail. But I tell you who hasn't been able to prevail is Philip Eng. He's now back to third place. So Ellis, the second. Oh my good grief.
That was well, that's how to do it, guys. Augustin Canapino. Yes, we've seen how not to. That's how you do it at that point. Sweeping round to drivers right. The bright yellow Schnitzelarm AMG GT3 goes through into fourth position. Augustin Canapino and Philip Eng. Take note, please. That's how it's done. It's not
must be said, that final sequence of corners, so tempting to stick your nose up the inside, but of course with the track kinking to the left, the bit in front of you is no longer tarmac, it's grass, and then it's anybody's guess what happens when you go there. So Philip Eng got it wrong. A couple of rounds ago we had a clatter over second place, did we not, John, at that final corner on the last lap, and that didn't come out with both sets of drivers smiling.
The track temperature easing up to 40 degrees Celsius.
It's been 42, John. I've been keeping an eye on it. It's now 41, but it's bobbing up and down. So we saw a little bit of cloud cover at the start of the race, and I think that's the deciding factor at the moment.
I think that's the hottest we've seen, Bruce.
Oh yes, totally.
And that is certainly going to have an effect on tyre wear. And I mean, you can't double stint, it's in the regs, but it does mean that you're going to have to manage your tyres. 8 laps we normally see from the cars at the front of the field. Some of the other classes get 10 or 11, but 8 laps at the front of the field. We have seen the odd 9, but it has been such an unusual occurrence that it has really stood out. Sammy Matty-Trogan, by the way, has, whilst all this has been going on behind him, has sort of, and again, this is all relative, but sort of checked out. 5.1 seconds, the gap between himself and the new second place driver, relatively new, Philip Eng. Then next to the BMWs is, Philip Ellis in second. Philip Eng in third is 0.5 of a second behind. Then there's another 9 seconds back to this battle, 4th and 5th. The AMG GT3, Mercedes-Benz and the BMW, the red, white and blue Total car of BS.
Now what I wonder at this point is there any noticeable damage for Philip Eng? He's lost that second place to Philip Ellis, the Mercedes managing to slipstream its way past. Just looking through the splits, you can't really draw any conclusions, but we've heard, John, time and time again from drivers after the race, during the race, if their cars had a clatter, it might not look damaged, but they can feel it. And notably, they say always up that long run back to the end of the lap. They just find that having bent body parts doesn't help making their car as aerodynamic as you can imagine. Who'd have thought, eh?
Stephen Wilkinson, RSL_studio, he's tweeted to that, enjoying the coverage while looking at a friend's iRacing telemetry data to see where he can improve a few tenths and keep those tyres alive for a little bit longer. I think that is going to be the story. In TCR, by the way, it is still a cracking battle going on with Sim RC TCR by just half a second. Diogo C. Pinto from Michael Schurtler, Team Huizinfeld, and then another half a second further back, Core Racing, then another half a second further back, DOT. Now those Audis, of course, hold
on, John, I can throw one more in. The next one is only 1/10 of a second further back. Ollie Peacock in 5th place, so it's super, super tight. 5
cars, nose and tail, and that is a class where they normally only change the front tyres on those cars. In the Porsches, Core Sim Racing still leading by about 1.5 seconds from Zorg Rennsport, from Ad Hoc Gaming by My Days, another 1.5 seconds further back. Then Team RSO have come up into 4th position, Manuel Weibel, but he's about 5 seconds further back. And in the Porsche Cup class for GT for 911s, it's Asher from Veed, from Bushman, from Shalowski. 8.5 seconds behind the 3 leaders, who are as close as together as being together as they possibly be. Heading up towards the carousel, there's the battle for the TCRs, and Core Sim Racing, Carl Janssen in that very distinctive yellow and tangerine 718 Porsche Boxster. Actually sunny and blue sky with a little cloud over the Eiffel and a little windy this morning, says our local in real life, Mercurius. Good morning, or good afternoon as it is to you, Mercurius, at RSL_studio. Bruce Jones, we have completed half in terms of the front of the field, half of the first stint. Some thoughts from you, please.
Close in every class is the simple answer. That Sammy Matty-Trogan had that little lead. He was only about 1.8 seconds clear. Then we had the clattering and the battering of Philip Eng and the unfortunate Agustin Canapino. That has allowed the Finn, Sammy Matty-Trogan, to get 5 seconds clear. But what I love is about you go down the classes, gap between first and second in the Porsche Cup class, 0.3 of a second. Go back down to the Cayman class, gap between first and second, 1.1 seconds. And down to the junior class, it's 0.7 of a second. It's so super close. It's exactly as it should be. But the big question now, is there any damage to Philip Eng in 3rd place in the BS competition? BMW. Can't really tell as yet, but he might start to route his tyres a bit. It's hot, and if you've got any damage and it's affected your camber by bashing into another car, that could really start to have an effect. But I think looking really, really good for the Williams eSports crew. I think they've been not given this on a plate. It's a 3-hour race, don't forget, but with their astonishingly strong lineup, with Dominic Steib waiting to take over, I have to say that they've got the advantage, and it's bigger than it could have been.
It's Brace Jones. I'm John Hindhaugh. Sammy Matty Trogan then with no pressure at the moment, other than trying to navigate his car round the Nordschleife, of course, and the pressure of knowing that the eyes of his team are on him. Second place, Manfilter, Team HTP. So that's the AMG into second after that little kerfuffle that we had earlier on between the BMW of Philip Eng and Augustin Canapino. Augustin's teammate has now taken over that car, and that has now fought its way back up to where?
Canapino in 21st place, Alex Arana at the wheel. As far as he's got so far, he's had a second pit stop.
Right, he's in 21st in class, but he's taken another pit stop. Yeah, he's down in the 40s. Yeah,
dragged my screen across. I thought, hold on, he was up into 20th overall. No, okay. So that explains that. And BMW diving to pit. So Philip Eng from second place has had enough. Maybe there's damage they need to get fixed. That's what I was looking for. Pitting early. The Mahler car leaving the pits as the BMW arrives.
Now the thing,
so maybe that was further repairs for the Audi. As I said, they don't always do it all in one go, or maybe they've decided to do things differently. There's another BMW stationary in the pit lane, but the important one is the one from BS Competition. Philip Eng bringing that in. Let's see what they do. He reverses back into position.
Oh, that'll cost him a bit of time.
That will, won't it? It's like fueling going on. So don't forget, he came in from third. Philip Ellis had got past. A whole host of cars are coming in. That's one of the Mercedes is pitting in behind. So maybe other people, not damaged, just deciding this is a tactic they want to do. After 5 laps, just remember that number. That could be very important.
Yes, and that's basically this race at 3 hours now. The guys are getting so quick that it doesn't split into the 3/8 of 24 that we've seen in the early part of the season. 3 8-lap stints for the guys at the front of the field, and that has caused this change in tactics, Bruce. I think we got up to, did we get 26 laps in the last race? Without looking,
we got one more than we expected, or most of the teams might have expected, because it was very, very clean running.
Yeah, agree. Very, very quick.
But it's not like adding another 3 miles to the end of your race, is it? It's adding 14 and a bit, which is a rather bigger factor to knit in.
So the pit stops have... Sorry, Bruce, go ahead.
No, you go.
The pit stops have started at RSL_studio if you want to be in front of my eyes here in the broadcast centre. Philip Ellis in second in that dark grey with the green and red racing stripe up the left-hand side of the bonnet. And Schnitzelarm Racing battling through that fabulous TCR battle, which was at one stage the top 5, still the top 5, having a cracking scrap, and that's where the danger time comes. And somehow Marcel Markovic has managed to pick his way through in the 4th place Schnitzelarm Racing. Next time I'm in Germany, I am going to seek out the Schnitzelarm restaurant and tell them that their virtual racing team is why I'm there. I've looked at the menu, it's awesome. All schnitzel all day.
And what you have to do when you go to a race meeting is make sure you get that done on the first day, because we always know by day 2 time becomes more precious. Day 3 there's no chance. It's racing. So John, that's on your list. I think I might join you for that one.
Yeah, seems reasonable. So with pit stops, tactical pit stops starting now. Here's how it stands at the top of the field. And none of the guys I'm about to mention have pitted. Sammy Matty Trogan now by 10 seconds from Philip Ellis. That's Audi for Williams Esports for Man Filters. The AMG GT3 Man Filter Team HTP Winward. Then Schnitzelarm Racing, that's the Mercedes AMG V8 that you can hear throbbing away in the background. Just going up the hill now past... going down the hill on the far side of the circuit, and heading down the hill to the bridge at Adnau. Then Mikkel Jensen for Valkenhorst Motorsport BMW. He's actually not that far away from Marshall Martovich. Kenneth Gulbrandsen is about 6 seconds further back. Then Race Union, Florian Bourdan in 6th position. None of those cars have stopped. The first car who has made a pit stop in the top category is, I think, BS Competition and Philip Eng down in 12th position. Do you concur, Mr. Jones?
Too much information. I'm scrolling fast.
Scrolling across, yes, I have.
Check it out. It's such a wide table we have to play with.
I need several more screens.
Yes, I need to know if that's a realistic pit stop or not.
That might have been just his damage. Okay, we'll sort that out in a moment. So still then 2.25 hours remain, and Sammy Matty Trogan for Williams Esports is leading out in round 5 of the DNLS powered by VCO.
Alles begann mit 2 Freunden und einer Vision. Unsere Initialen stehen für Qualität und Fortschritt. Wir schaffen den Technologietransfer von der Rennstrecke auf die Straße. Wir fertigen Gewindefahrwerke, Sportfedersätze, Stabilisatoren, Distanzscheiben und Gewindefedern zu 100% in Deutschland. Wir arbeiten mit Herzblut und Hingabe für diesen einen Moment. Wir sind Motorsport. Wir sind H&R.
So it is round 5 then of the DNLS powered by VCO, the Mahler 3-hour race, 3 Stunden, and we have had a change at the top of the Cup 2 category. The yellow and black car now heads the black and red. Oh, that might change again though as they're together. They are both carrying the livery of Asher Racing on their doors. Martin Asher was on pole and led, and now Claudius Veed, as they climb the hill towards the bottom of the Caracciola Carousel, the lead up to the bottom of the Caracciola Carousel, that tricky long right-hander, that's where they are now, the old test hill on driver's right, driver's left, excuse me. Now up into the carousel, and confirmed visually as well as on the timing screen now, Bruce Jones, that Claudius Weed has sneaked past the pole man Martin Asher.
What we saw a couple of moments ago, probably around Kesselchen, is the fact that it was the first of two mistakes from Claudius Weed. He got in front of that yellow nose Porsche, but he ran wide on both instances, and that allowed Martin Asher to get closer and closer. It looked as though Asher may be able to toe past him. Another point at which Weed goes really, really wide. He is leading, but by golly, he's struggling to keep it on the black stuff, and certainly a far more measured driving line, a much smoother approach from Martin Asher. It served him well. He wants to get back in front, but I am just slightly concerned. Weed is really, really pushing it right to the limit in his quest to stay in front in the Cup 2 class. And Asher looks much cooler, much calmer. Can't see any damage on his car, but maybe he made a mistake. Maybe that's why there was a change in the lead of the Cup 2 class. But certainly Claudius Weed is doing his everything to try and stretch away. But right now, I think his everything could involve a trip into the barriers unless he cools it down a little bit.
A flurry of pit stops in the GT3 class. Jack Sedgwick in for into the car for Manfilter Team HTP. That was the car that was in second, so that was a 6-lap stint for them. Michael Routingen has taken over Schnitzelam Racing. He came in ahead of Valkenhorst, where Scott Michaels will take over the 34 BMW. It's Tomczyk time for HR BMW Green Hell. He's getting into the 112 car. Yannick Metzler for Racing Fuel Academy, and Ringfeizert Racing, Sim Racing, Nico Menzel will jump into the 188 car as they're quickly rejoining. So that again, Bruce, they're not out of fuel there, only 6 laps down. So they are back timing now to the end of the race already.
They're back timing, and with the temperature now above 42 degrees on the track, I think they're also assessing just how much more tyre where they're getting this time around than they were in the earlier rounds of the championship. It's a warm spring day on the Nordschleife, and I think it's going to maybe have a far bigger effect than we can realise. Except if you're finished, your name is Sami Matti-Trogan, you're able to put in lap after lap, 7 minute 54 seconds last time around. The next car in line, 7:59.75, and a bit seconds slower for Mikkel Jensen in second place. That's why he's 22 seconds down. So maybe Sami Matti-Trogan super sweet on his tyres. Let's find out.
Just a word, by the way, about the weather conditions. This race is being run in the simulation today. So today's date is on this simulation. So it is the 30th of May. And therefore the weather conditions are indicative of what it is today. A little bit of high cloud and warm conditions. When we get to the iRacing 24-hour race from Le Mans, that race is going to be run at September, which is when the real race is going to run. So more darkness and a different weather model. So that's in about a month's time, that race, and we'll be bringing you full live coverage of that here on the Radio Show Limited network of channels.
Well, I'm very pleased it's going to have September temperatures, because as someone who normally works in the pit lane, it's much cooler in September, because that pit lane at Le Mans, that holds its heat, that great big concrete edifice, and even after it's dark, you still get the heat kicking back up. Anyhow, that's enough about my life.
Oh, there's a touch between two of the 718s. That was the battle for 5th and 6th, and Patrick Hahne has made the mistake, got too close to the back of the 5th place car, right ahead of him, and that has cost him a couple of positions. It was Marcus Deck, I think he was battling with in the Sim Racing Channel Black machine, and he was very heavy contact with the barriers as he was heading up the hill towards the base of the run to the Caracciola carousel. He's got damage on that car, not always visible, remember, damage. The modelling in iRacing concentrates on the dynamics and the driving feel of the car and the performance levels and the sound, not necessarily accurately modelling every scratch and ding in visual terms, but certainly in performance terms. Bruce, can't imagine that he would have got away with that, Patrick Hahne, without knocking a few miles an hour off, and that is really key here.
Absolutely. And one of many things to which I don't know the answer, but if you damage your car in this, can the damage continue to manifest, i.e. become worse on an incremental basis as the bits that are broken become more and more stressed? And anyhow, that's a little thought, but I'm sure it could be a realistic factor, because we all know that once you do damage a car in life, bit by bit, it ought to gradually, or potentially gradually, could involve other elements of the car, other components of the car becoming damaged accordingly. There's one for the professors to fix.
Oh, well, we did have a Porsche blown engine with 2 laps to go in the, albeit it was a GTE car. Scott Hargrove was well inside the top 10 in the Real Torque gear, bright green RSR, and 2 laps to go. The flat 6 gave up, and he potted back to the pits and finished well down. So it can happen, and the damage that you do, if you don't get it fixed, is it going to fix itself, Bruce? So yeah, it can be an issue.
Talking of damage, 8th place now, Philippe Eng. Don't forget he was fighting over 2nd place. He's had that pit stop. I'm waiting for him to complete this lap, and then I'll be able to see what sort of pace he's managed to pick up after the repairs. But the fact he's back in 8th, well, that's also down to the fact that quite a few of the drivers in that class have made a pit stop now for refueling. But interesting to see how far he can recover. But all along, Sami Matti-Trogan eking ever further clear at the front of the race. Again, another 5 seconds faster than Mikkel Jensen in 2nd place. So it's looking very, very good, that particular Audi. But in terms of comeback runs, Philippe Eng, of course, had that pit stop, damage repair. But one has to look to see where Alex Arana is. His was a car that needed far more damage being repaired. He's down in 39th position, but don't forget he's made not 1 but 2 pit stops. So he's probably got all that damage straightened out, John, I would surmise.
Well, it's not slowing him down, is it? Right Turn Lover is asking, hang on, I was distracted by the coffee. What were you talking about, the 24-hour race? The RTL, the VCO Le Mans iRacing 24-hour race, which is next month. In fact, it's a month away, 4 weekends away, is going to be run with the time of year and day set for the start time of the real Le Mans 24 in September, because you can time shift in iRacing. And in fact, Bruce, last weekend at the 12 hours, the Hankook 12-hour race for Creventic, that was actually run on the weekend in the virtual world that it would have run originally. So that was the end of March, so before the clocks had changed, different weather conditions, and longer run into darkness. And that's exactly what's going to happen in one of the blue ribbon events of the iRacing calendar, the the Le Mans 24 hours. So that will be I think it's I'll check the date, but it's the week after Le Mans would have happened in June. So it'll be 4 weeks this weekend. And
okay, we've got the front runners in the pits now, John. Sami Matti-Trogan, just remember his lead was 26 seconds over Mikkel Jensen in the Walkenhorst Motorsport BMW. So the regular front runners who are taking the regular approach, we've had some come in a lap or so ago, but for Sami Matti-Trogan and the Williams Esports team, 7 is the magic number, and a host of their friends are following them in.
And they'll all take tyres, of course, so you'll expect to see the cars go up. So Niels Koch will go through into the lead for Team BMW Bank, will he? No. He's gone across the line now. He's skimmed through. I was too busy watching the minor categories there.
He's gone into 2nd place, but that effectively is the lead. But hold on, Sami Matti-Trogan has rejoined the circuit.
I think he got out in front. I think Trogan got out in front, so Niels has dropped into 2nd. Yeah.
5 seconds is the gap between them. So all look fairly regular pit stops. I was just quickly trying to create another timing screen. I failed in that. But so right now it's Sami Matti-Trogan, Niels Koch, Jack Sedgwick and Christian Cronjes have just gone back out. Came in from 2nd place for Walkenhorst in 35 BMW, out into 4th.
Owes us a pit stop though, does he? Niels?
Who?
Niels?
He made a pit stop earlier.
Oh yes, he was one of the early stoppers, wasn't he?
He
You're
was.
absolutely right.
Took over from Bruno Spengler, did we say? Yes.
He did. He took that over from Bruno Spengler at the end of lap 2, I reckon. Maybe lap 3. So he has now. He's on lap 7 now. So he's barely halfway through his run. So this might work for them. Sammy Matty-Trogan doing a double at the sharp end of this race. So there's 109 car yet to be driven by Dominic Style, who is next in. So now that's interesting because the regs say you've got to do 2 driver changes. So is it going to be Dominic back to Sammy and back to Dominic? That'll just about work, won't it? With the time remaining.
Yes, it can. It just means that Dominic could have more lunch today, I think.
Yeah, he's only going to do one stint. Yeah. Actually, that's not necessarily the case because they might have to do a short stint at the end. So Dominic could do a stint and a half and then put in Sammy Matty for the 5-lap sprint to the end or whatever it's going to be. But they've done, at the front of the field, Sammy Matty did 7. He's the only one of the top cars to have done a full 7-lap stint. We see them do 7 or 8, and we've seen a 9. So this is interesting to see how they're splitting. I do think, Bruce, you've hit the nail on the head for the tyre wear. Nobody that Dominic. No, that's a different category.
No. I think everyone's decided 8 is no longer the magic number. 7 is the magic number.
7s and 6s. Philip Ellis came in after 6. He's in that car at least is in 3rd place. The man built the car. He's handed up to Jack Sedgwick.
Well, it could be 775, John.
Yeah.
If we go for 26 laps again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Clouds are starting to build up a little bit. I'm noticing a little bit more sunshine and shade up and down the pit lane. Keep an eye on that, but it's still air temperature as it was at the start. 23 degrees track temperature. Bob back down to how it was at the start at 40 degrees. The wind is building up a little bit, 14 kilometres an hour. So yes, our local correspondent, Zach Mercurius, giving us some good information there. I'll look for visual clues around the circuit, but not enough to really affect the cars today.
Marcus Chirac has climbed aboard the 227, taking that over from Martin Asher. And that car now back in the lead, with Simon Grossman having taken over from Claudius Veed in the Sim RC Cup 2 entry, which was in the lead. So that's been a change since the pit stops, or at the pit stops, Bruce, for the 2 Asher Racing branded cars, although in slightly different liveries. Thank you for them doing that, so that at least we can tell them apart. And under different, running under different entries as well.
Exactly. So I'm always quite sceptical of timing screens, particularly ones with as many splits as we're enjoying this weekend, John. In that little, has there been a fumble in the pit lane, but certainly for 276, looking very handy indeed. Simon Grossman, as you say, Sim RC Cup, the yellow nose. Ooh, that's understeer, my dear friend. So early in the lap, pushing very hard before he goes out onto the Nordschleife part of the circuit. You can see the front end of that yellow Porsche washing wide. So we forget, John, that for these drivers, they're also adapting once they've just taken over at a pit stop to just what sort of grip they've got. But wouldn't that be so embarrassing if you dropped it 5 corners in before you'd even got onto the really tricky bit, the Nordschleife?
It has
pushed too hard too soon, but they have to find these things.
It has happened, and there are plenty of places in the world where the pit exit is far more difficult than it is here at the Nurburgring. I think particularly Daytona, coming out the Daytona pit lane on cold tyres, particularly difficult. Battle for 9th and 10th. Richard Westbrook in 9th at the moment for the Phoenix Esport Racing Green team, which confusingly for Hindhaugh is actually a yellow car. And he's got Scott Michaels for Valkenhorst BMW, goes around the outside as they commit from up the hill towards, now where are they there, Bruce? Out of Bergwerk, coming up the hill from Bergwerk.
Thereabouts. I was just sort of ruminating on the fact that I'm at home in my office, just on the Dorset border with Wiltshire, and probably 35 minutes drive away is the driver of the Audi there, Richard Westbrook, up at his home in Bath.
Yes.
Just, as you say, we're talking about Alex Arana, yet to meet Agustin Canapino, but one lives in Spain and one lives in Argentina. This is something that I still find extraordinary, that anyone at any point in the world could be competing in this race.
The IMSA race of the last few weeks, I've had Matt Griffin, who is not even a full street away, Nick Tandy, who's down on the outskirts of down towards Bedford, so that's what 15-20 minutes away, around some lovely roads.
I see what you mean.
Yeah, well, it is like, is he still in Northamptonshire? I'm not sure, Nick.
No, but the thing is, that sort of gets me, you've got a driver who is doing this in the morning in their life, someone on the other side, turning to night or the middle of the night, and you think about their state of being awake, their awakenedness. Great battling here. Richard Westbrook still hanging up from Scott Michaels, and Max Rieberich. Haven't seen much of him in the second of the Team Phoenix Audi. So they're having a really good battle. Is it tripping them up? Well, what trips them up, of course, John, around here is finding, say, a TCR car, because TCR cars very seldom are on their own, are they? And they could be having their own battle, and you've got your battle, and you've got to get through without losing ground. So it's super, super tricky.
Just hearing a bit of inter-team chat, I think, in the background of our effects feed from the virtual Nurburgring Nordschleife. Hopefully nothing untoward coming through there for you.
But that's been an interesting thing this year, hasn't it? Lando Norris
exactly so.
Not having a good life in the IndyCar scene. When he heard other teams' messages that suggested they might just drive into his path or into him. And then let's not beat around the bush in the Formula E. We've had a driver lose his regular works drive. Daniel Abs had a friend or a colleague stand in for him, and that's had real world effect for him, losing his race seat in Formula E after all these years. So interesting days.
I think that's the German commentary team that we're hearing on our FX feed. So apologies if that's a little distracting at the moment. We'll get that sorted out with our colleagues. I was going to say at the Nürburgring, but in fact some of them are at the Nürburgring, really. It's been a great collaborative effort between real world and the virtual, these events. Cracking battle here with three
Scott Michaels
cars.
used the stream very early to get past Richard Westbrook, who's now got his own teammate Max Rieberich right on his tail. But that
is a genuine three-car battle, isn't it? Yeah.
Is and was, because the BMW is now pulling away. Now that Scott Michaels has got through, he's got half a second advantage, I'd say, at the start-finish line over Richard Westbrook. In fact, 0.8 of a second. It's even better for him. And Richard Westbrook's lost another position. His teammate Max Rieberich has dived inside, the blue Audi going ahead of the yellow one. And just waiting to check one more thing on that. I just want to check that all of the GT3 runners have made their pit stops. Yes, they have, with all those laps on the board, 8 laps on the board. Nobody's tried to be a hero. Yeah, every car in the field has made its pit stop now.
So that what we're seeing on the timing screens are properly are proper positions, virtual positions, aren't they? Yes, they are.
So it's 5 seconds between Sami Matti-Trogan leading from Niels Koch, but Niels will need to come in much earlier to make the second pit stop for that number 107 BMW.
June the 20th and 21st is the iRacing 24 Hours of Le Mans, which we'll be covering for you in sound and vision. Audi R18, Porsche 919, HPD ARX 01C, plus BMW M8 GTE, Porsche 911 RSR, Ford GT, GTE, and of course the Ferrari 488 GTE as well. Full 24 hours. And the point I was making about that piques right turn lovers' interest is that that will be running on the September date in terms of time of the year. Yes, it's the date I've just given you, but in terms of what's happening in the sim, we will bend time, we will shift time to the actual date, proposed date of the event, because I don't even think we can say that that is certainly going to happen at this point, but that is when the sim, it will happen in the sim, in terms of the weather, the darkness, etc. So that is going to be really interesting. Some 3 to 4 hours more of darkness at that time of the year than we would get in its middle of June date normally, which is very close to the longest day, longest amount of daylight, of course, here in Europe. So that's a one for your e-calendar. Once again, that is the iRacing Le Mans 24 Hours, part of the FIA World Endurance Series on iRacing as well, with Audis and Porsches, the LMP1 field, also with the HPT ARX 01C, and then the GTEs as well. June the 20th and 21st is the actual date that will happen on your calendar, but the time in which the race will happen in the sim is that middle weekend in September that is blanked off for it at the moment in the real world. I love the fact you can do that. Might give us an interesting little look ahead and a preview of what Le Mans might look like at that time of year.
Nothing is impossible with sim racing. This is what I've established over the past. It's only 2 months, John, since you let me come and start playing in this world, and it's just endlessly fascinating to me. There are so many variables, but because of that, I mean, way more variables than I could possibly even contemplate. But just because of that, we can get so close to how it should be, and I think it's been a real eye opener for a whole host of people who've got motor racing in their bloods but have not been involved in sim racing. And I also think it'd be developing sim racing to a way higher level than it's ever been before. So I think it's win-win wherever you look.
I don't disagree. I suppose, George, John Hindhaugh here, Jack Sedgwick on the track in third place for Manfilter Team HTP Windward after the pit stop cycle. And the big winner in that first pit stop cycle, pretty much all of which had some element of strategy or tactics in them. Nobody ran the full 8 laps at the sharp end of the field. And Niels Koch and the Team BMW bank, the 107, the dark grey BMW, was the one that came up through the field, Bruce, and now just 5 seconds behind Sami Matti-Trogan, 14 seconds ahead of the battle for third place between Jack Sedgwick and Christian Cronjes for Valkenhorst Motorsport number 35.
Yeah, and talking of Niels Koch in that second place, he's putting in some pretty impressive splits around the circuit. I'm waiting to see what the first full flying lap will be for the race leading Sami Matti-Trogan, who's doing that second stint. But certainly haven't really watched Niels Koch's lap times in detail over the previous few rounds, but he's really putting in some great laps for Team BMW Bank. And it's their turn to really start to get up to the sharp end of the field and make some impressions. Jack Sedgwick, likewise, young racer, doing some really good stuff. But in fact, Niels Koch has got the gap down to just over 4 seconds now on Sami Matti-Trogan. So not just good split times, good real times too. So yeah, interesting days. But he is going to have to pit relatively soon. Now we've got 8 laps for the race leader. Should be 9 laps any second soon. And completed the lap, but Niels Koch doing a good job under 4 seconds. He's closing in second place.
It's interesting, isn't it, when a driver gets into the groove, whether it's real world or virtual racing, when they are feeling comfortable, the time seems to come effortlessly, doesn't it, Bruce?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, we shouldn't really blink about this one, because Niels Koch won last time out with Kai Kashuba and Bruno Spengler. But don't forget, there was that contact at the final corner that sorted that one out. But no one was going to back out. But yeah, just now, driver in third place, Ad Hoc Racing, Danny Deuce, has run off the circuit, bashed the barriers, and come back on board in 369. But that will be heart in mouth. And that was just about coming on to the start-finish straight. So lost his concentration momentarily, and I think got away with it. That's a scary moment.
And what car was that, Bruce? Sorry?
369, he's weaving his way.
Oh,
he
yes,
has
I see.
car, unfortunately, weaving around the grey and white car. Third place now becomes fourth as Niels Carstensen goes past up the Dottinger Höhe, but
third place
not that far back to the pits.
Yeah, third place in GT4 for the Ad Hoc Gaming machine, and it's not that far back to the pits. Those cars normally do 10 or 11 laps from memory. It's been a lot of going on. Earlier on, the championship leaders, the Marla Racing 186 car, now has had 2 pit stops. Alex Aranas got into the car, did 1 lap and came back in, and now has settled into a bit of a groove. But that was the issue from the accident earlier on. Meantime, Valkenhorst and Race Union battling together for 8th and 9th position. Scott Michaels, very impressive virtual reality driver. He's just gone by Marvin Otterbach. Marvin, a fairly a driver with a bit of versatility. We've seen him in TCRs as well for Race Union. Same colours on that car. Just as I glanced up there and saw that Audi of Race Union, just for a moment it had a little look of a Nissan GTR at the front end there, which sort of caught me out, but now my old eyes have focused better.
It's the sunshine bouncing off the front wing, John.
It must be. That must be exactly what it is, yeah. So the other thing that I need to get up is our predictions and see what we are looking at the moment in terms of whether we're going to get 24, 25 or 26 laps.
John, while you're doing that, you just mentioned that I think it was the TCR class cars can stay out for 11 laps or so. That nobody can in this race today, in this heat.
No, I don't think so.
Because
You're right.
They've all made their pit stops, and we've only got 9 laps on the board, not even 9 for some of them further down. Gap between first and second, 3.97 seconds. And last time, nearly a second gain by Niels Koch on race leader Sami Matti-Kogan's Audi. So it's BMW hunting down Audi. And down in the order as well, walking horse Scott Michaels, he's in 8th in his BMW. He has hunted down an Audi in the past, as John mentioned. Marvin Otterbach was demoted, but the driver who's catching 2 of them is Max Friedrich. We saw him overtake his Phoenix Racing teammate Richard Westcott a lap or so ago, and now he's closing in on the tail of Otterbach. Pick him off as well. Let's see.
Scott Michaels is the man on the move at the moment, though, isn't he? Up into 9th position and has pulled away at a rate of knots up into 8th position, excuse me, and pulled away from Marvin Otterbach, who's going to
He's lapping 4 seconds a lap faster than him and the 3 cars in front of him. So Michaels should be able to catch the Audi of Piotr Jagodzinski on this lap. That's WRT's second Audi. He's only just under 3 seconds clear. So yes, certainly Scott Michaels on a massive charge, which will put a smile on the face of Sam Michaels and David Pittard, who share his car. Horse 34 makes its moves. Yeah,
he's going to have to cut his way through some traffic at the back here as heads down into the foxhole. He's got a couple of battling GT. In fact, that's first and second in the Porsche Cayman class, the 718 GT4s. So that's Sindre Setsas and Sasha Berger that he's going by at the moment. And as I've said that, I'm going to say that was not the cars he went past. Was it? Yeah, I think it was actually. I'll take that back. All right. Core and Zorg Rennsport, Core Sim Racing and Zorg Rennsport, often with multiple entries in multiple categories, and not beyond the bounds of possibilities that they get podium positions or better in a couple of different classes. See the similar liveries as the Porsches in the Cup 2 category for the 911 Cup classes. Simon Grossman and Till Norvig battling at the front of that, the 276 and the 234, and I think actually that was the two cars that they just went by rather than the Cup class leaders. But still, Richard Westbrook in the wheel tracks of his Phoenix eSport teammate, as they are now trying to close down on the cars ahead, but that car ahead is just beginning to stretch away a wee bit.
Yeah, at this point, Richard hasn't got the pace of his teammate Max Rieberich and dropped 4 seconds off his tail, but Rieberich is very busy trying to catch Otterback, but the pace of Scott Michaels is really, really impressive. His next target, he's in 8th place in that Walkenhorst BMW, and he's already taken 1.5 seconds off Piotr Jagodinsky in the WRT Audi in the space of about a third of a lap, so you have to say 8th should be becoming 7th before the lap is out, Scott Michaels. And then he's got to find another dozen seconds to catch Michael Broughtingham, who was 6th in that yellow Schnitzelarm Mercedes. But as I said a short while ago, Scott Michaels is lapping about 4 seconds a lap quicker than him as well. So he's got plenty of people he can pick off. Just got to be a bit patient.
Love that run up the hill from Bergwerk all the way up. It's pretty much all the way uphill, all the way to the Caracciolo carousel. It's flowing, it's fast, and when you've got the car dialed in there, you can really make some time up. And it's a question of just lifting at one place, maybe slight lift and a dab on the brakes, then a downshift, and then back on the throttle again. It's all about momentum. So many parts of this sinuous circuit, all about momentum. Having over the top of the... Sorry, go ahead, Bruce.
What I was going to say, all about momentum until you hit a curb and it bounces your car sideways.
Very
and
much.
It takes a while to sort out, because some of these curbs are really quite vicious, and if suddenly your car has bounced 2 or 3 feet, a metre or so to one side, you've got a different thing coming up ahead of you, and it could be a barrier.
And that is the key part of the Nurburgring Nordschleife. It's knowing which ones of those you can use and which you can't. So coming out of Brunchen, you know, you can use the exit curves there and go onto the block paving. Flansgaard, super quick, and there are certainly curbs there that you can't use, but once you run out onto the final part of Flansgaard and over the top of the hill where this battle is right now, you can use the block paving on the left hand side and give yourself the best run into the right-handers as you're diving downhill across one of the many bridges that the Nordschleife crosses, as it's going backwards and forwards across the public roads through the Kleiner Carousel, and now setting yourself up on the run for home with Rieberich and Westbrook now heading into the Gallows Hill corner.
Actually, John, that's Otterbach.
Oh, it's Otterbach and Rieberich.
It's
yes,
Rieberich
it is.
Catching Otterbach.
Correct.
And they're being dropped by Scott Michaels.
Michaels has just driven away from them. This
totally.
is a super start to his stint. Little bit of a drag from Otterbach in the white and tangerine Audi. It was only a 718 Cayman, but it's not much slower, and he did get a little bit of a tow from almost 2.5 seconds back. The drivers tell us you can feel the aerodynamic advantage of the car following in the hole in the air that's been made. So Rieberich should be getting that. Oh, and his prey, Otterbach, has been slightly held up by another one of the Porsche Cup cars, and now as they come on the start-finish line, it's advantage to the blue car. Goes down the inside very early to driver's right, has about a quarter, now a half of the cars overlap, and will be in super position down into turn 1. Now it's who's going to be latest on the brakes, and the answer is it's Mark Rieberich, who goes up into what has become 8th position. So that means somebody ahead of them must have stopped, does it?
I'll tell you who stopped. I was just about to say Niels Koch. He was the one who's going to have to come in early. He was running second, and he was only, 4 seconds or so down on the race leader, Sami Matti Trogan's Audi. But he owed us the stop, and at the edge, well, maybe he did the 2-lap stint, or maybe we thought 3 for Bruno Spengler, followed by 7. That would make sense for Niels Koch. So 3 and 10 were their pit stops.
Yeah, correct. 7 laps for Niels. averaging just over 8 minutes, including his in and out laps for his 7 laps. 8 minutes per lap.
That means Jack Sedgwick is second.
Correct.
In the MAN HTP Mercedes, and Walkenhorst number 35, Christian Cronjes, is third. 3 seconds in a rear from Sedgwick.
Hello to Maycole, who is pounding around Europe in his virtual truck at the moment, and has added RSL 1 to his sound system on that, the radio player. So he's listening to us at the moment whilst driving. I've heard a lot of people are running around Europe virtually at the moment, visiting places that they haven't been in this virtual truck simulation. Well, hello to Maycole.
You need an HGV licence for that?
Well, virtually, I'm sure you do. Yes. It's another good way to see places that you haven't been to, isn't it? Let's be honest. So through then this battle, which is now for 8th and 9th position, as they head towards Flugplatz. Again, over a bridge and starting that long climb over Flugplatz. Noticeable the difference in how the two Audis there rode the airborne section as you get to Flugplatz, and the Phoenix car, all 4 wheels off the ground, whereas the Marvin Otterbach car, now I don't know if he lifted or maybe even tapped his brakes, but that car stayed on the ground more there, and that looks like the Asher Racing car. Well, true. Asher Racing car has just been in the barrier, and that is one of the leading lights in the Porsche 911 Cup class. And that car has dropped some positions. Martin Asher started the race. It's Marcus Schirach, and there was a fantastic battle there between 3 cars. And just going into the Caracciola Carousel, there were some GT3s, the SP9 category cars coming through. And I think that Yuri was a bit too nice, to be honest. Got offline and clouted the barriers up on the high side on driver's right. Meantime, Bernd Ziebel having a look at 4th position. Nicholas Last as they come into Tiergarten. Oh, those Porsches look really, really squirrely as they come through those fast sweepers at the end of the lap, Bruce, and into the pit lane. Nicholas Last then pits from 4th position.
Well, I
apologise. No, that was Jens Klingman ahead of that battle. It was the HR BMW, Jens Klingman. And no, Nicholas Last did come in as well. Nicholas Last has come in as well. Sorry, I'm second guessing myself there. Go ahead, Bruce, sorry.
And I don't normally say exciting news. The car in 45th position has made a pit stop. It's now 47th. Agustin Canapino, the Mahler Racing Team Audi. Don't forget that was running in 2nd place until being given a clatter into Tiergarten by Philipp Eng early in the race. That's their 3rd pit stop. So Canapino, will he change over to Alex Arana? No, it went Arana to Canapino, didn't it? Canapino, Arana, Canapino, but really looking a lap down, whatever lap times they can do on the circuit, they can't haul it back from there. So championship leaders have just got to try and see what they can recover from today, what they can retrieve from a race that really was snatched away from them, I'm afraid. They didn't have the answer to the pace of Sami Matti-Trogen and the Williams eSport Audi, but they were the best of the rest. And with the consistency of that lineup, the excellence of that lineup, they still were in with a very big shout. But right now, the Williams eSports today has been made a whole lot easier, particularly with the Canapino car so far down the order. So tricky for them.
Haven't seen much of the TCRs, but there's been a good battle going on. The Aviasorg Rennsports, Maxi Peckel, 6th place car, has got the Leipert eSports yellow and black car right in behind, and then behind that one is another battle, because this is as we expect. So behind Marian Hensel is Max Reidmuller for Team Heusingveld, the 404, and they are all battling for position. In behind that, I think, is a GT3 car. I think that's Jens Althaus in the... No, maybe not. I just see it moving around. No, it's a Porsche Cup 2 car. So that's not in the battle. Headlights flashing from that Porsche, who's getting a little bit frustrated. But these guys are having their own scrap. Throws it down the inside and then has to back out of it at the end of the Hatton back. Now goes to driver's left, past the 104. Excuse me, not the 104 at all. The 404 Team Heusingfeld Audi, and make short work of Max Riedmuller, and that might give an opportunity maybe for a bit of drafting. No, wasn't quite close enough. So 6th, 7th and 8th on the same run up the hill to Schwedenkreuz, and then to the downhill right-hander at the top of the Vauxhall to Arenberg. Vauxhall in any car, very, very scary indeed. It is super fast, and even on a tourist day, if you've got anything with a bit of performance, it gathers speed very, very quickly down through there, and you really have to be careful how you tickle the curbs. Down one gear through the first right-hander, down another gear for the left-hander, and then a third gear for the final right-hander before you punch out of there at the forest section. And then just slightly climbing uphill, 2 left-handers. You can give the first apex up, it's the second one that's important. Make sure you get that right. Uphill braking area, so you're late on the brakes for the next left-hander as you're heading into the area of Kallenhardt, that downhill sweeping section. Right-hander, almost a hairpin, short shift, 3rd, 4th, sometimes 5th gear to get the car balanced before heading down through Kallenhardt. Then there's the miss hit section as you're diving down the hill. That refers to the apexes of the 3 right-handers, apeces of the 3 right-handers, then into the 1st or 2nd gear hairpin, and now you're on the run down to the bridge and the old secondary entry point for the tourist laps. Bruce?
TCR magic, isn't it? It doesn't matter this battle.
Is it magic 6, or 7, madness?
8. If I say these 3 names, I might shuffle them in a second. Maxi Peckel, Marian Hensel, Max Riedmuller, all want a piece of the action. Certainly say Max Riedmuller for Team Heusingfeld at the back of that pack. Well, back of the pack, that's a third of a second from the front of that pack. Looks like the driver most likely, but they appear for the moment to have clear track ahead of them, which isn't the friend of the driver in 3rd place in that group. Max Riedmuller wants, actually, of course, they're the slowest class, so they don't want to catch. They're not going to catch anyone, are they? Sorry, I was about to contradict myself. If they were in, say, the Porsche Cup class, they could catch other drivers. They're not going to. They're not going to have anyone other than cars coming through and past them. But right now, Max Riedmuller in 8th place to Team Heusingfeld. What are we talking? The length of his bonnet behind the Leipert car, Marian Hensel. Oh, Max Peckel just side by side. Is the space for it? Well, certainly Marian Hensel reckons will do so. He's on the left-hand side of the track, the right place to be when they come to the next corner.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Position, magical.
That is absolutely brilliant. And Hayes Riedmuller trying to get the triple draft, and we've got another Porsche in there as well. Still cars side by side. Zorg Rennsport, the Avia car, trying to defend, but I think Riedmuller's gone through. He has, and here comes the 291 Porsche as well. That is Nicholas Last for Sim Racing Academy, their red team. And in there is a GT3 as well. That looks like the car collection red car. Or is that the WRT Team 2, the 99? But certainly that was precision driving by all 3 of those TCR drivers. You know, it's easy to forget, Bruce, isn't it, that the guy who's being passed has got to just hold his line. And those cars are moving around quite a lot in that uphill stretch.
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is that almost at no point on the Nordschleife is the track ahead going to carry on going straight. It's going to kink left or right, and if you've got a driver on the outside of you, who's to say which is in the right position when the track moves ahead of you from one side to the other? You can't just drive in a straight line here. And I was just about to say, what is happening with the Marla racing car? Canapino has been in the pits for an age. He has now been released, but way down the order now. don't think there's anything that can be recovered for them from this race. It's been really cruel, and I certainly think the more I look at the incident, not their fault in that battle over second place that in which they came unstuck. And I think the fact it spent so long in the pits just shows how much damage it received when it went effectively 360 down the barriers at Tiergarten, and clearly did an awful lot more than we could see that has had to be rectified. So it's all about pride now for them in the rest of this race. We've got just under half the race remaining, so plenty of time for driving, but I don't think from that far back there's a single point they could put in their pot.
No, and that is, as you say, Bruce, that's another pit stop for that car. So this is Augustin getting in after getting back in. And I got to say, I don't think you can put any of the blame at his door, if I'm honest.
No,
he held his line.
No, 100%, because there were 2 points at which the Philipp Eng's BMW kissed the grass to start with at the kink, and then unfortunately when the track kinked left into Tiergarten, he was on the grass, and the Audi was on the tarmac. The Audi suddenly wasn't on the tarmac after it being clattered, but it was hitting the barrier on the right-hand side of the circuit from the driver's point of view and rotating down it that really, really did all the damage. And the repairs clearly have been very lengthy indeed. So you can imagine some oaths being uttered in Bilbao and in Argentina.
So Augustin did that short first stint. I think then Alex got in for just one lap.
I believe so.
Then Augustin got back in for 6. And he's just come out the pits again. So they've actually done their 2 driver stints now, and it will be just a question of getting to the end and see if there's any other issues for other people for them to get some points, leading the championship coming in here. Back to the TCRs, the battling TCRs at the end of the Dottinger side-by-side action again, with Leipert in the yellow and black car side by side with Team Huizenveld, the 404 car, and Aviasor Rensport peel off right into the pits. So for the moment at least that battle is down to just 2 cars, but to be honest that's quite enough excitement. At 12 laps to go, I'm predicting now. When I say I'm predicting, I mean I'm reading the prediction screen on our marvellous strategy software. And that's an hour and 38 to go, so 12 to go. So that at the moment is only predicting 22 laps, Bruce. So these additional stops for what we presume is excess tyre wear in the heat of round 5 of the NLS, the DNLS by Virtual Competition Organisation, the mile of 3 hour, that is costing at least a couple of 3 laps. So we are, in laps terms at the moment, by the computer, about halfway through the race.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it'd be a factor. It's proving to be a far bigger factor than I guesstimated. But it does look as though 7:75 will be the regular pit stop timings, sort of regular runs for the drivers at the front end of the field. And Sami Matti-Trojan sitting on a lead for 23 seconds. He can call the shots in his Audi. And you'd have to say looks pretty good for his second win of the year. So far, though, he's done half the race, just over half the race. Hasn't let his teammate Dominic Steib have a single go at the wheel. But hey, I'm sure they're friends, really.
Well, off the track. Hello to Jules Audi Bridge, who is tuned in and absolutely locked into this. There's a brisk business being done on the Radio Show Limited Listeners Collective on Facebook. The Zach Evans reminding us that iRacing fast forwards the sim of the weather for a few days before the race in order to make sure the model of the ground is stable at the start of the race. It's mind-boggling. Yeah, you're right, Zach. I love it. It's absolutely brilliant, isn't it? The attention to detail of the simulation, and I use that word advisedly. I hear people saying, are you going to play on iRacing? If you don't play on iRacing, you're not going to get very far. It takes dedication, application, and far more talent than I'm afraid I've got. I've used it in the past to help learn circuits in the real world, and it's been very, very useful for me. And that's me on my own, making a lot of mistakes. so that I don't bend metal in real life. And I really take my hat off to these guys who are racing close quarters with the sort of reaction times, Bruce, that you have to have, particularly on a quick and sinuous track like the Nurburgring Nordschleife, and then having, you know, sometimes, as we've seen, 3, 4, 5 cars around you, all in the same class.
I mean, that is the point. It's the fact you could have drivers from 3 other classes around you, and accordingly, their cars will perform in different ways at different points on the circuit. It'd be bad enough if you had drivers of 3 cars of your own class, because at least they should be performing in a similar way to you. But the variables, as if there aren't enough variables racing on the Nordschleife on its own, are just so considerable. And it is in so many ways. Stay off the curbs, don't touch other cars, don't damage yours. Then, of course, you leave it to your team to give you the right number of pit stops to make and call them at the right time. You cannot just wander into this and expect to be competitive. And certainly for a lot of the real-life racers, it's been a massive, massive eye-opener for them. But I think it's all about just being measured in this. You've got to be quick, that's a given, but you've got to understand how to behave in traffic. And the drivers are really alerted to this. Very, very strong driver briefings, very clear directives given to them. And that just leaves them the small task of going out and delivering. And but it's the sheer number of variables, having cars of different classes around you at a tight part on the circuit, of which, let's face it, John, there are many.
It amazes me that you can get 2 cars side by side in some places, never mind 3. Hello to Droid Andy, love the Twitter handle. He's up in the northeast of England, which is sunny and warm today, as most of the country is revelling in this very slow-moving, high-pressure system that's bringing up warm air from the European continent. He says, I'm enjoying the commentary on RS1 in audio. If you've got the bandwidth and the ability, then we do have sound and vision on radio-show.co.uk and some live timing as well. But Andy, nice to know that you are tuned in. And at the moment, the battle that we're keeping a very close eye on is that at the head of the TCR category. 4 different categories, 2 Porsche Cup classes, SP9, which is GT3, and SP3T, which is TCR. And another one of the AR cars, the Asher Racing machines leading, but this time again entered under Sim RC TCR, and it is Jürgen Frank. My goodness, how many times have we said his name in the last few weeks? Bruce Jones, and actually Patrick Kabinji as well for Core Sim Racing. 2 of the big teams in any class, and 2 drivers who have proved themselves beyond any shadow of a doubt if they go down through Brunchen at the moment and heading up towards the ice curve. And there's not even a TCR's length between them.
I mean, one thing that's really become crystal clear to me, it's not just top sim racers and professional racing drivers going in and joining them, seeing what they can do. You've got to be with the top team too. The amount of control these teams have, Sim RC Racing, Core Sim Racing, these have excellent engineering setups, and without all of those factors, driver excellence, team excellence and tactical excellence as well, you're not going to be at the front end. So the fact we see these teams fighting it out in all sorts of classes, race in, race out, just shows that they've got all these factors absolutely spot on. And there'll be other drivers out there as capable at the wheel, but maybe not with such a good team. But you really have to have everything in line if you're at the front end in this. And my eyes have been absolutely peeled wide open, and the Virtual Competition Organisation, VCO, do provide this amazing platform on which these teams, drivers, engineers can show their class. And the fact they can do it round in, round out, I think tells the story, John.
I do like the attitude of the organisers, and dare I say it, there are some real world organisers who could learn something. The amount of information that comes out, let's just break off from that in a moment, because the battle for first and second in TCR is on the dotting of and they are side by side with the 3rd car heading right up alongside them and going through. And has the Core car been able to get a tiny little draft from that Porsche 911 as he went through? And now here comes an Audi as well. That might allow the Sim RC yellow and black car a little bit of a run it has, and they've swapped positions twice on the Dottinger Hoa, and it's back into the lead for Sim RC. No, it's 3 times the swap because Core goes back through as they head into the Tiergarten. That is brilliant stuff, so evenly matched, but a tiny mistake by the Core Racing car. Are they both heading into the pits at the same time? Yes, they are. Oh, brilliant stuff as the leaders from TCR head into the pits. That, Bruce Jones, was that 3 times it swapped on the length of the Dottinger Hoa? I think it was.
I think you're spot on there, John, but the thing is, so many times drivers are maximising their in-lap, but you're just so tied up, you expect them to go down to turn 1, they're in the pit lane, there may be precious little between them there. That was fantastic racing, and that's why the TCR class is just always so popular, but absolutely on top of their game. Now, let's see what's happening out on the track, as they say. So still Sami Matti-Trogan leading by, get this, 1 minute and 18 seconds.
Yeah, he's
Some of
cleared
those
out.
around him have made their pit stops.
What's interesting to me about those 2 TCRs, Bruce, you keep an eye on what's going on at the bottom end of the top 10 of GT3, if you would. That was 2 9-lap stints for those 2 cars to start with, but that then is only... No, that's not right. 2 6-lap stints.
6 laps, yes.
For those 2 cars. So even the front-wheel drive cars, that's a 6 and a 5 that they've done. So only 11 laps in 2 stints for the front-wheel drive cars. Now that is not normal practice here.
No, because normally the GT3 cars running here as SP9 are the first ones in, and then up to 2 laps longer on a stint. So we normally have 7-lap stints, 8-lap stints, so they could be running normally 10 laps, the TCR class cars.
It's Bruce Jones, I'm John Hindhaugh. Great battling, and still over an hour and a quarter of this lap to go. Strategy, speed, tactics, all still to play out in round 5 of the DNLS powered by VCO. It's the Maler 3 Stunden and the Nurburgring Nordschleife, and we've got it all live for you in sound, vision and with timing at radio-show.co.uk.
Alles begann mit 2 Freunden und einer Vision.
Well, I think this
Unsere
heat, Bruce
Initialen
Jones,
stehen für
is
Qualität und Fortschritt.
really
Wir
playing
schaffen den
havoc with people's
Technologietransfer von
strategies.
der
And
Rennstrecke auf die
I'm not
Straße.
sure
Wir
with what
fertigen
it's
Gewindefahrwerk,
2:45
Sportfedersätze, Stabilisatoren,
on the track at the moment in the afternoon, so quarter to 3. I'm not sure with the sort of temperature we've seen that it's going to, unless it clouds over massively, I don't think that track temperature is going to drop that much.
Motorsport.
No, and it's also been heated in sunny weather for a number of hours now, really since sun up this morning. So even if it does cloud over, it's not going to be a sudden drop in temperature, that's for sure. It's going to take a few hours to go down even with clouds. Very nice moment. Right, Dominic Stibe has taken over the race-leading Audi 109 from Williams Esports. The race is run with more than half distance covered by his teammate Sami Matti-Trogan, the guy who qualified on pole. And let's see what Dominic can do. But he has a lead of nearly 1 minute and 20 seconds.
And from here, Bruce, we are now projecting that there are 9 laps to go. So Sami Matti's been in since the beginning, so he does have to get back in again. It's my understanding there have to be 2 driver changes. I don't think that was brought in a couple of races ago, and I don't think that regulation has been rescinded. So we might have to see Sami Matti back in that car. With 9 laps to go, it's going to be a relatively short run then, but we're not seeing anybody getting anywhere near that 8, certainly not at full race pace.
No, they're all clear in their understanding that tyre wear is massive today. 40 degrees track temperature. Oof.
Yes, it's eating away at the performance of the tyres, which is accurately modelled. So 22 laps predicted then, and we're not yet into the area where we can see them. Their last pit stop still to come, strategy still to play out. So at the head of the field then, we're seeing more pit stops as the weather conditions have played their part. Extremely high track temperatures, meaning that tyre life rather than fuel consumption, Bruce Jones, is what is the controlling and determining factor in how long these cars are going in between their pit stops.
And the big question, John, is for the drivers, how hard do you push on those tyres? Certainly the fastest lap of the race was set by Sami Matti-Trogen. No surprise there, he qualified on pole position by actually 0.8 of a second, so he was the driver on top of his form. But that's a one lap, effectively get it sweet for one lap. This is about getting it sweet for 7 consecutive laps on your tyres. Push too hard too soon and your lap times are going to drop away, but certainly looking at the metronomic pace of the Finn, small surprise his car, well, I was going to say is leading the race. It's not leading the race, but it's served its second pit stop, whereas Marvin Otterbach, who's in the race Union Audi, will be coming in at the end of this lap and will shed the lead accordingly. But yeah, be kind to your tyres. It's National Be Kind to Your Tyres Day, John. Put it in your diary.
See if we can grab a quick interview from some of the drivers who have completed their stint. With a bit of luck, I think we can say hello to Carl Janssen from the Core 303 car. Hello Carl, can you hear us here in the broadcast booth?
Yeah, mate.
Well, how was that, mate? Hot temperatures, that's just killing the tyres, it looks like.
Yeah, these hot temps are brutal. It really hurts the performance of the car. There was some corners where the car almost folded itself, so no, it was a tricky stint for sure. And especially the GT4, where you can't really change anything in the damper settings. It's a tricky car when it gets hot.
And has that meant you've had to shorten up your stints? I don't see anybody going to the end of their fuel runs, really.
We are going to the end of our fuel runs. We can only do 6 laps now, though, with the reduced fuel we can have. So yeah, everyone is going to the end, but it's quite nice when you can only do 6 laps, because then the tires are quite nice.
And does that mean you've got to really be careful in the opening lap or two that you don't overheat those tyres early?
It's quite alright with the overheating. It's more kind of the cold tires you need to look out for, because they are very cold when you get out on the track. So it's basically having one of those spins you need to look out for more than anything else.
It's always cracking competition in your class, in the club sport class. We've talked about it before, about how tricky this car can be to drive. The question that I keep asking people, so I'll ask you, Carl, you could jump into an easier car to drive. Why don't you?
I think it's just really that we enjoy this car in the team. And you have the TCR class, but the TCR with its front wheel drive, it's a completely different kind of car to drive. So I think the GT4 is a fun car for us to drive. It brings the racing very close, though, around this track, with the draft helping out to keep the field close and all that. Yeah, it's a really good car to race with.
In terms of this DNLS this year, powered by VCO, how have you enjoyed the competition, and how have you noticed the difference that VCO being involved has made in terms of the organisation and the publicity?
I love to race around the Nurburgring. It's a phenomenal track. It's so good. And especially with how the competition have been this year, it's been a very fun season to drive. Yeah, it's been really good, all in all. Can't really say anything more than that. It's been very fun.
Well, you're always one of the drivers we keep our eyes out for. You've become a bit of a qualifying specialist as well, Carl. We see you at the sharp end of the field, and qualifying here is so important, but it's not like you're going to get 20 laps to work yourself up to something. You've got to switch yourself on straight away. That's a particular skill in these events.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm so quick in qualifying around this track, because usually when I drive on other series, like in the Porsche Sport Super Cup, qualifying is not my strongest points. So I don't know. I think it's just the Nurburgring is a completely different thing to qualify around. Where you have, if you make a mistake somewhere, you can pull it together in another place anyway. So it's the qualifying. Sure, it's important, but it's almost like doing race laps around qualifying as well. So
well, pass on our best to all of your colleagues at Core in all of the different categories that you run in. You've certainly given us plenty of entertainment and excitement over the last few events that we've been covering here from RSL. Thanks once again for joining us. Carl Janssen, thanks mate.
Yeah, thanks a lot guys.
It's Carl Janssen then from the 303 GT4. And at the front of the field, now we've got the battle of the giants here, Bruce, because Alexander Voss, BS Competition, one of the real gurus of sim racing, who's been pulling along and mentoring the real world drivers from BMW Motorsport, along with pulling along their learning process, and he's in the car now. Voss in second position, just half a second away from the lead at the race union. Marvin Otterbach, very, very steady laps from Marvin, who comes into the pits and second in as well. So through goes Sammy Matty-Trogan back to the lead on the pit stop cycle. 8 laps to go at the end of that one. So what I have to say, I hadn't noticed the change in fuel for some of the classes, so now I've started to scramble to see if there's been a change in fuel for the GT3 cars as well, because with 8 laps to go, if we were and the tyres can hold on to it, that could be the final stops for some of these cars, Bruce.
Yeah, well, Sammy Matty-Trogan still listed in the Williams Esports Audi. He's just gone back into the lead of the race, but we've only seen his name. We haven't seen Dominic Steib, his teammate, is listed in that car at all. So we'll have to keep an eye on that one. There could have been the transponder problem, but here we are with a good old chunk of the race. We've got just over an hour to go, and Sammy Matty-Trogan appears to have done all of that in the race-leading Audi. So let's look and watch. The gap to second place, 6.8 seconds back to Niels Koch in the Team BMW Bank Z4, rumbling its way down towards the entrance to the Nordschleife. So Sammy Matty-Trogan done all the work, where Niels Koch has done a lot of the work in the 107 BMW, but he has shared it with Bruno Spengler, who kicked off in that. He's got Kai Kashuba, who's shared the lineup with them when they won last time out, waiting in the wings, but so far Niels Koch has done the giant share of the second place running BMW's stints in this race.
Well, Michael Racing has started something now on these virtual driving simulators for the HGVs. Got a number of people, including Armando, saying, "Oh, I didn't know you could add stuff to the radio. I've just worked out my presets now." Well, don't forget, RS1, RS2 IMSA radio and RS3. 3 different sets of programming. RS2, ostensibly, of course, IMSA contents, so live and replayed IMSA content feature programs. RS1 includes our coverage of the DNLS and the other major events, and that's where we'll have the iRacing Le Mans 24 hours as well, later on in June. And RS3 is for everything else. And RS3 this afternoon, second of a brand new series of programmes called the Football Rewind. This is for soccer fans or those interested in the world's beautiful game. And this week we go back to what has been described by experts as the most lucrative game of football ever. It's the championship playoffs in the English leagues to be promoted into the Premiership, and the amount of financial assistance that brings with it makes it apparently the most lucrative game of football in the world. And possibly the very best was Charlton versus my club, Sunderland, going back a few years ago. I'd never seen that game before Declan Brennan, the show's host, asked me to come and talk about it. So I watched all the build-up and the whole match for the first time. I'd listened to it on the radio. Not going to spoil too much of it. If you know football, you'll know what happened. It was an extraordinary game of soccer. At 3 o'clock this afternoon on RS3 UK time, and then repeated at 3 o'clock Eastern and 3 o'clock Pacific. It's football, so it has to be 3 o'clock on 3, doesn't it? That's the Football Rewind. Charlton Athletic versus Sunderland AFC, the Championship Playoff Final Classic, reviewed with the benefit of hindsight by me in the company of the host, Declan Brennan. And if you didn't hear the Hereford United versus Newcastle United FA Cup replay game, that is now available as a podcast on the archive at radio-show.co.uk, or where you get your podcast from. Any of the aggregators, if you search the Football Rewind, Radio Show Limited production, or publication rather, and make sure you subscribe to that to get the downloads every week if you can't listen live. Right, still to go, just on an hour's worth of racing here. We are predicting only, in inverted commas, only 22 laps to go, and that is all down to the extremely warm weather conditions that we've seen in the simulation today. First and second in TCR, just through Brunchen, heading up towards Ice Curve now. Understeer City from Patrick Kabinji, which is quite unusual actually in these front wheel drive Audis. The good fortune of driving one in real life as well as in simulation, and they actually, you can easily forget that they are a front wheel drive car with 300 and plenty horsepower. Tend to rotate nicely in the corner. Oh, Kabinji goes wide there and had to just gather it all back up again. No doubt, Bruce Jones, how hard these guys are pushing in the TCRs, and no quarter being asked or given at the sharp end of the field, and they've got only a gap of 5-6 seconds to Max Riedmuller for Team Huizingveld in third position.
Yeah, well, Max Riedmuller was with them earlier in the race, and but just looking at Patrick Kubinji's twitch, he did incredibly well to catch it and compose himself within the blink of an eye. He's still just under half a second, just over half a second down on Jürgen Frank, but that could have been a race-defining moment. But somehow, again, we talked earlier about you do not want to hit the curbs. That was exactly what happened to Kubinji, the core sim racing team, and the tail end of the car went out of line. My golly, his hands must have been fast to haul it back into a straight line. And the fact of the matter, we only lost about 0.3 of a second, but it could have been a whole lot more. But right now he's on the rev limiter out of the Dottinghoe, running towards the end of the lap. He's trying to pick up a bit of a toe, and he's starting to get it. You can see it, John. He's now got close enough to really haul in the class leader. Jürgen Frank still in front in TCR, but the gap is coming down to a car's length and less.
This was their out lap, so they might have been struggling with cold tyres earlier on in the lap, and now they've got the added distraction of one of the BMW Z4s coming through, or is that a Mercedes? It's a Z4, and it dives into the pit lane as they go across the line to complete their first flying lap of this stint. They're both doing a double here as they go through down towards turn one. There's nothing between them, barely a car's length, as they turn right-handed into the third gear, first corner. And Jürgen Frank then having this great battle. He's got clear track ahead of him. Patrick Kubinji looking at the back, the dark coloured back end. Oh, just loses the back end, going through the second left-hander in the arena section, and now onto the shortened version of the Grand Prix circuit. The hairpin comes up very quickly indeed. Down through the gearbox again. Now just wait, you've got to be patient. Wait for that little bump where there's a slight depression on the track, and that's where you get the power on. Using the shorter version of the Grand Prix circuit here, as we always do in the VLN, the NLS races. It's only on the Nurburgring 24 hours when you go all the way down to the Dunlop curve at the bottom of the hill. Now heading out through towards the chicane. Can take the, as you'd expect from a touring car, you can take the curbs there. Oh, huge oversteering moment for Kabinji. He turned in super quick. He took an inordinate amount of speed into the cut through there, and he was, well, what, quarter, maybe more than that, of a turn of opposite lock on, and that's unusual in a front wheel drive car. He didn't dare put the throttle on, as he somehow hung onto the back tyres, clearly still either cold or maybe more worn than they thought. They don't normally change the back tyres in these 3-hour races, Bruce, and I wonder maybe if they have done here and the back was a little bit cold.
You know, I think he's forgotten those 5 words the virtual team manager said to him before he went out. Be kind to your tyres. He is caning them. One of those sideways moments was enough to really, put a seed of doubt into his mind, but he's pushing so hard, but still just cannot get level, equal with Jürgen Frank. Jürgen just seems to have it nailed down in that Sim RC, the black livery Audi, but Patrick Kabinji, he takes the prize for trying. He is really pushing. He doesn't seem to be set back by his errors, but bit by bit he's rooting those tyres, John.
Hello to Zach Evans, who's been watching, but he's going to have to watch the last hour or so later on, because Enduro Dog, as he calls it, is staring 2 burning holes, looking at him, wanting that walk. Should have got that done first thing this morning, Zach. Come on, time management. Bruce was out for a walk with the dogs in between our technical test at the start of the broadcast, weren't you, Bruce? Time to do that.
No, John. I planned ahead. He was out the door at 7:25.
Excellent.
This morning.
Excellent.
With me attached, that is.
Yes, it was a quick cup of coffee, chat with 1 or 2 of the neighbours who were walking their dogs past us. In fact, Matt Griffin's dog, Louis, was walking by when I was out with my coffee earlier on. I should say, I'm not sure whether he was walking Deb or Deb was walking him, to be honest, but it's quite an extraordinary thing that although we're social distancing, of course, here in the UK at the moment, the last 10 weeks we've done more socialising with people around the area who walk past on their dog walk than we've probably done we've done more than 10 weeks than we've probably done in 10 years. It helps that we're here more often, in fairness.
It probably does, but John shouting "get off my land" isn't socialising.
Oh, sorry, okay,
that's a greeting.
I always leave the shotgun broken over my arm, though. I don't want to be in any way aggressive. Let's check the class leaders, which we haven't done for a wee while. Sammy Matty Trogan leads by 5.5 seconds from Niels Koch in the BMW Bank 107 car. For Porsche 911 Cup, it's the 227 of Marcus Yidach. For Asher Racing, they've been there or thereabouts, haven't they, first or second all the way through since the start, and one could say the same of the lead in the 718 GT4 Cup class. Sindre Setsas, yes it would be. Sindre Setsas for Core Sim Racing now at the head, and Sim RC TCR lead in the TCR class, the SP3T category, Jürgen Frank. So names there: Sammy Matty Trogan, Marcus Chirac, Sindre Setsat, Jürgen Frank, that we have become very familiar with, Bruce, in the last 10 weeks or so.
It's called being at the sharp end, staying at the sharp end, keeping out of trouble. And for a lot of these drivers, it's incredibly hard to stay out of trouble, but they manage it. It's super close quarter racing. And the thing we found, John, isn't it, that for real world racers coming to take part in this, when they're in really close traffic, that's been one of the very hardest things for them to feel just how comfortable they could be or uncomfortable they are feeling when they've got cars right next to them, because the vision they have is largely out of the windscreen, so they have to really try and gauge the blind spots and the areas when you're trying to go 2 or 3 abreast around the circuit.
Just trying to do a little bit of mental arithmetic here and combine all of the information that we've got. I think the longest GT3 stint I've seen is a 7-lap stint, which would tend to suggest to me that they've had a fuel adjustment as well. I know their tyres have been taking a pounding. Sami Trogan's done a 7. Niels Koch has done a 7 as well, and then he's done a 5. Spengler's got to get back in that car, and I would suggest that Spengler will get in a lap or two's time, and that would leave him 6 laps to go. 5 or 6.
His final stint will be longer than the Williams Esports Audi, because that's run regularly, but Spengler did that very short first stint. So at the moment, though the gap between them, literally in the space of a lap, half a lap, has bobbed from 3 seconds to 5. It's now 4 seconds. Pretty much even Stevens at the front of the field. Niels is on a very different tactic in this final hour of the race to Sami Trogan. So for the Williams Esport Audi, they will have a shorter final stint, and I think in terms of tyre life that will be have really quite a factor that we should have unroll in front of us.
Traffic again at the 14-kilometre mark, heading up the incredibly fast climbs that you have here, and you've got to know what's over that brow. It's no good heading in and thinking, yes, this is third gear left-hander, and in fact it should have been a fifth gear left-hander. Of course, doing it the other way is even worse, because that would probably end up with a bent car.
You can see who else has really started to make some moves. Good lap times being put in by Scott Michaels. He keeps on picking his way forward in the 34 Walkenhorst Motorsport BMW. He's now up into 6th place. Not long ago he was down in 10th, 9th, 8th positions, and certainly his story is one that's going upwards and away, must be said. But nobody seems to be able to do anything about the pace of Sami Trogan and Williams Esports. They won the second round of the championship. We have to say they've had their mishaps in other ones. They haven't been on the podium since 13th in round 3 and 4th in round 4. It looks though they should be good for their second win of the campaign.
So under 51 minutes to go now, and in the window for your final pit stop at the end of this lap. Certainly might have even been at the end of last lap as well. Still predicting, well, in fact, I was just about to say still predicting 22, but as the leader goes through onto another lap and Sami Trogan pits. Sami Trogan pits, and Team BMW goes through to another lap. It's just clicked over to 23 laps, so the prediction now is 7 laps to go and a 23-lap race. So that would be spot on. We know the car that has been leading, the Trogan car, can do 7 laps on a stint. It'll be a full set of tyres, has to be. But and I'm going to throw this in the mix, unless there's been a mistake on the timing. Sami's driven that car all the way through, hasn't he?
Yeah, Dominic has just got on board.
I thought you had to do 2 driver changes.
Well, the teams have learnt through the course of this championship so far, the digital NLS. In fact, we had, don't forget, the BS competition crew.
Yeah.
They lost a win, didn't they? Because I can't remember, they put 2 tyres on at one pit stop instead of all 4, and that cost them victory. And I think DNLS number 2 or 3, I can't remember which one it was. But the interesting thing to me, John, was the fact that your predicted number of laps seemed to flip over almost at the second that the Williams Esports Audi came in from the lead this race. They might have similar software to you, and that could be massive. We've talked about the difference between doing 22 and 23 laps in this race, huge in terms of your race tactics. And if they've just called that absolutely right, they'll be laughing. If they've got it wrong, and suddenly it goes back to 22 laps, which I don't think it will, then they'll be laughing out the other side of their face. But right now, Niels Koch leading for Team BMW Bank, and we knew they were running a different tactic. I was going to predict would have to have a longer final stint and Williams a shorter one, but it seems to have flipped around the other way, the way they're playing it anyhow. Yeah,
Niels Koch's done 7 laps on his previous stint. This is his 6th that he's on at the moment. Meantime, There's 20 seconds between Jack Sedgwick now in second and the first of two Vulcan horse cars. Scott Michaels, by the way, has gradually picked his way up in that stint and a bit in the 34 car to a minute and 11 off the lead and into fourth place. So he is staring at a potential podium there. And the tactics on that car, let me just see how long Scott's been in that car. I think he's on his second stint. David Pittard did a 6 to start with, then Scott did 5. Scott's in the car again now. Now he can't go to the end from where he is now, so I'm expecting David to do a short stint again before the end. That's not really any disadvantage for that car, because David Pittard very quick indeed. And Scott Michaels for Vulcan Horse then, having just gone past Max Rieberich for Phoenix, and as I say, claimed that fourth position. Now it's his teammate.
So it's a question of which Vulcan Horse Motorsport BMW will end up on the third step of the podium, I think, because
there's a lap
now. Mikkel Jensen 20 seconds down on Jack Sedgwick's Mercedes and over half a minute up on Scott Michaels.
Yes,
so you should be able to manage that.
Yeah, and they have done their two driver changes, because Christian Petronius got in the middle, Mikkels got back in again. He can't go to the end from where he is now. He's one lap better off than Scott Michaels and one lap worse off than Rieberich, but none of those cars, I reckon, can go to the end, particularly not if we have got a 23 lap race. And in fact we've dropped down to 22, so it's right on the cusp at the moment, and it's going to depend on pace. That's really, really tough for the strategists then, Bruce, because 1 lap extra here is not that one lap extra at a normal Grand Prix circuit. If you've got your fuel fill wrong, or if you've got your maximum amount of laps wrong, you're not going to be able to course round. 0.7 of a lap here is not going to get you home.
No, and I think what surprises me most is the fact that Williams Esports, I would have thought they could have afforded to have done another lap just to be playing safe, but they decided it went to 23 laps, and in they came, happy for a 7-lap final stint. But I would have thought it'd be the other teams, the chasers, that were going to hit early, if early indeed was the case. But right now, we've got Dominic Stive out. I can't tell him his lap pace, but his splits around this out lap are looking good, so he's working well on the cold tyres. They come up to temperature. Track temperature 40 degrees. It's been stable pretty much around that point through this race, up or down a degree or two, but it's hot, it's hard on the tyres.
Right, so let's we reckon that 7th position car, the Williams E-Sport car, I reckon that's the first car that can go to the end. Let me just check Otterbach in front of him, because he cycles to the front. No, I reckon Otterbach can he go to the end? No, I think Otterbach's going to be, Marvin Otterbach is going to be a little bit short.
And Marvin hasn't shown the race pace. He's been there or thereabouts, but a few seconds and a lap down, so that isn't the sort of performance that's going to take him to the top step of the podium, I would suggest.
If it's 22, he might be able to get to the end, Otterbach. So that might be the first car that can go at the end, but that'll be a pace rather than a fuel thing. He's only 0.6 of a second ahead of Dominic Stipe, so it will be Dominic who will definitely go to the end from here. So ultimately, in a few moments' time, when that car goes through, the key thing for me is how far behind the current leader they are, Bruce, and it's about 1 minute 15, 1 minute 16, and that I think that depending how far Niels Kort and Jack Sedgwick, obviously Sedgwick's 18 seconds closer, so that's a minute, but down the pit lane is about a 30-second delta, and fuel is a full tank is just under 30 seconds, tyres 25, 26 seconds. So depending on how much fuel they put in, that number 107 Team BMW Bank Dark Grey Niels Kort car is going to be there or thereabouts because the fuel, you can decide how much you need to put in for the run to the flag, and of course that's an absolute amount of time.
Yeah, the later you stop, the shorter your fueling element of that. But the big question for me, possibly a bit unfair, can any of what I call the slower GT3 class cars, which effectively Scott Michaels backwards, can they, if the race only goes to 22 laps, can that put them in the mix versus the others that are quicker wanting it to go to 33? Because at the moment we've got the Williams Esports Audi down in 7th place, 1 minute 16 off the time of Niels Koch, off the race leader. So it's a real mix. Could some of the teams be, having been cautious, being kinder to their tyres, not had such good average lap times, could that suddenly put them into the mix if it swings back to 22 laps?
Well, I don't think Sammy Matty can go to the end. I think he needs another splash, even if it goes to 22. That car last stopped at the end of lap 13, so he's only going to 20 or 21 from where he is. So I don't think they've got a chance. The best, Otterbach was the last car to stop in that terms. He stopped at the end of lap 14. So if he can do 7, he can certainly do 21. Possibly a 20. I don't know. Scott Michaels, he last stopped at the end of lap 11. So he's got another stop. Jensen 12 for the man filter car, Jack Sedgwick. Now,
okay, while you're just having to think about that, John, what I'm trying to do is look at the lap pace of the drivers who are still out there, still owe us a third stop, and very few of them are much below the 8-minute mark, whereas a car that's come in and made a stop can lap in 7 minutes 55. But we're only talking about a 5-second difference around the course of a lap. We don't have that many laps left, so this could be really one where, I might have to dig out my abacus. I wonder where I put that last.
Well, it's going to all come down to where the time expires and who's in the lead when that happens. It's going to be one of those. HTP Winwood take the lead now with the pit stops going on. Cronje's in. Spengler back in the Team BMW bank car, so he will take that car at the end. Sam Michaels is in the pit lane for Valkenhorst. That's spot on time for them. I expected those guys to have to stop. Christian Cronjes for the 35 car. Sedgwick then has got another couple of laps, possibly. It's been solidly 6-lap stints for the Manfilter HTP Winwood car. Hello to Mark EJ. DNLS has been one of the highlights during lockdown, he says. Well, there's a big team of people behind this. Thank you for your kind words. We got Connery cutting the pictures today, the whole VCO organisation. Thank you, Michael and Nico. And of course, all of our colleagues over there in Germany, as well as Bruce Jones, who's been outstanding as the voice with me, John Hindhaugh, and Tim Grace, our executive producer up in London. As well, of course, none of this would have happened without the responsible adult Eve Hewitt, who manages to be omnipresent. Now, there was a car that did a driver change on the formation lap. That was the Schiller Aloma car. That may have been an issue there. You can let the organisers know.
It was because, unfortunately, Schiller lost his
connection, of course.
Connection, didn't he? Car number 2.
Fabian
I thought
Schiller.
it was going to be Philip Noller, but Alexia Loma seems to have replaced him in the second seat in that car. But as we said, John, imagine Alexei sitting at home just seeing how his teammate does, and unfortunately suddenly the car's in the pits, as we joked about him having to throw his coffee cup to one side and his donut the other and get on with the driving. But that was obviously a massive setback for them, and Fabian is now in 10th place overall. What it could have been,
they lost a minute and 45 right at the beginning. And so they've.
And how far down are they? 2 minutes and 10. So that should have put them in a podium position.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Absolutely right. That's the Get Speed performance car we're talking about. The number 2 machine, the Vodafone team Get Speed. Great to see that they've dragged their real world sponsors in, as many of these liveries are reflecting, getting some visibility in the best possible way for their real world partners. And it's what we've been doing here as well with here at RSL, particularly with our IMSA programming. Thanks to the guys from Porsche and Haggerty Insurance, also Mazda and Michelin. all dived in and helped us create a bit of content. This is a little different because we've been allowed into the hallowed halls of what is established sim racing. Thank you very much to everybody who's made that happen. So this is starting to hot up again, Bruce, in every sense of the word. Exactly 38 minutes remaining. Sedgwick may well pick at the end of this lap from the lead. If he does that, that's going to give them a 4-lap sprint to the end. So they'll have done 3 6s and a 4. And that's
okay, John,
interesting.
here's a question for you. Alexander Voss in 5th place overall has just banged in a 7-minute 53-second lap. That's way quicker than anyone else. And as I say that, in fact, that's just been eclipsed by Dominic Steib, who's taken over what is effectively the race-leading Audi. It's from Williams eSport. It's down in 3rd place at the moment, but Jack Sedgwick, he owes us a pit stop in the HTP Mercedes. Max Rieberich likewise needs to come in. But that BS competition car, don't forget, that clashed over 2nd place at the end of... was it that 2? Yes, it was, when he clattered into Canapino. That is working its way back. But what is the stint length that Alexander Voss is on at the moment?
I think he's going to be 1 lap. He could be 1 lap short. He's done a 7, and then he pitted, and that was, let me see, that was 3 laps ago. So I think he might make it. He might be able to make it, and that would make that car a real contender. I think
he's good for a podium just about, because he's catching up with Marvin Otterback.
If he doesn't have to stop. If he doesn't have to stop. We're still predicting 4 laps to go at the end of this one. And Spengler now aboard the 107. The BMW, great to see the Z4 back again. Looks like they may have picked up is there a tiny bit of damage on the bonnet, or is that just the design of the car? He heads up the hill from Bergwerk, excuse me, up the hill through those 3 extremely fast left-handers, and then got to pick your point. It's absolutely flat and it's dragging uphill. Lift, back on, settle the car. Oh, that was fantastic from Spengler. Ben Constanduris, who's part of our IMSA broadcast team for the digitals, remember seeing Bruno at the back end of last year in a big sim racing symposium. See what I did there? He said Spengler could barely keep the car on the track, and he's gone away. He was disgusted with himself. I spoke to Bruno about this. He's worked really hard with the likes of Alexander Voss and Lauren Heinrich and various others, and he's put the time in, which is the other thing that you have to do, Bruce, and he's become one of the real world drivers that you've got to say has adapted to this super impressively.
You know, one of the reasons he's done that made that leap, which would be far greater than he could have imagined until he was at the symposium, is the fact he's prepared to say, I need to learn.
Yes.
And how many professional works racing drivers that are long-standing like Bruno ever stick their hand up? They're too proud, most of them, but he's been prepared, and as you said, worked very closely with Alexander Voss and Lauren Heinrich, and he's listened, and by golly, he's clearly learned, and now he's busier than he ever is in his regular racing career. And BMW need a pat on the back, because they have really taken to sim racing, and as we said, John, they put out professional race releases, interviews, and you know, they really have done a fantastic job, and I think they deserve all the success. And it's also keeping their PR crew on their toes, keeping them sweet for the season.
And they were the first of the big manufacturers to really take it seriously. Porsche have sort of started to catch up, as in comes Sedgwick, as we predicted he would. Sedgwick, now this is the last pit stop for the man-filter team HTP. He had a minute on Max Rieberich in 2nd place for Phoenix. So how much time does that number 48 car have to spend in the pit lane?
Forget Rieberich. John, forget Rieberich. It's the driver who's right on his tail. Dominic Steib in the Williams eSport Audi. He will pass the Phoenix car probably down the start-finish straight. That's the pace setter. That's the one he's got to pay attention to.
I think we might see the Audi in the pits. We will. The Audi is in the pits for its last pit stop. What about the HTP car? It's not moving. It's going to lose the lead. Through goes Williams Esports. Dominic Steib then in the 48 car. And still, that HTP car not moving. They must be taking a lot of fuel. I'm not sure why. They're up on the jacks now at least. Well, that was an awful lot of fuel for what is effectively just a 4-lap sprint now. I wonder if they got that wrong as they came in and put a full fuel load in by accident. It defaults to full fuel, and therefore that would have been 30 seconds plus 20 for 25 for the pit stop and a bit of a run down the pit lane. The gap then between Philip Ellis, who's climbed back aboard, 22 seconds to the leader. So through has gone Steib, through has gone Alexander Voss for BS, the two BMWs leading. It's Gilbranson for EWRT, who is now in third for the first of the Audis. Now, can Gilbranson...
Yes, but, John...
Go ahead.
Gilbranson has only made 2 pit stops in WRT2, so he is going to be out of the reckon. He's got to come in and make another.
Yes, this is his last lap. This is his last lap. He'll have to, I'm presuming, hand back to... Oh, he might not hand back to Piotr. So it's between Voss then in the BS. I don't think Alexander Voss can go the distance. There's 2 laps difference between the Williams Esports 109 and the BS Competition 189 BMW in the favour of the car that leads. So Dominic Steib is absolutely in the driving seat in every single sense of that statement there, Bruce.
Yes, however you approach the logistics, the sums, the whatever, the car has been driven beautifully, and it's just trying to look at the pace he's managed on. Bang. I was going to say, if you can lap in his position anything under 8 minutes a lap, such is the advantage you should carry on to win this race. And City just quickly goes out, bangs in a 7:54. Why not? So excellence. Had the advantage since the outset in the race. Of course, we had the clash at the end of lap 2, just about under 2 seconds down behind him, the battle for second place. And Philippe Eng got it slightly wrong in the BS competition BMW and clattered into the Marla Racing Audi, and that took out Canapino, and that's been a real shame for them. Canapino and his teammate Alex Serrano, I've got to scroll almost to the bottom of my screen, 19th place in class. They're literally going to pick up no points at all for that.
That's bad. Yeah. That's bad for them, Bruce. I'm going to try and get to the bottom of this. The leading car can go on fuel, but absolutely has not yet made its second driver stop. I'm going to have to check back on that one. It's the run to the flag, last half an hour.
Alles begann mit 2 Freunden und einer Vision. Unsere Initialen stehen für Qualität und Fortschritt. Wir schaffen den Technologietransfer von der Rennstrecke auf die Straße. Wir fertigen Gewindefahrwerke, Sportfedersätze, Stabilisatoren, Distanzscheiben und Gewindefedern zu 100% in Deutschland. Wir arbeiten mit Herzblut und Hingabe für diesen einen Moment. Wir sind Motorsport. Wir sind H&R.
He's right in the groove at the moment, and they've got 33 seconds. No, mate, 15 seconds, excuse me, on Team Heusingfeld 404, who've got 41 on the 4th place Team Ad Hoc Gaming by my days. So the closest battle on the circuit is a battle for the lead in TCR. Bruce Jones.
Who'd have thought it, John? We could predict that every race, and we can pretty much say every race it's core sim racing and sim RC. Just fantastic action, and they're just so well balanced. But at the very front end of the race, I must confess I didn't see DNLS 1, but DNLS 2 was my first sighting of Dominic Steib and Matty Trogan and Williams Esports sitting on a 4.5 second advantage at the head of this race. They are the gold standard. BS Competition, though, have raised their game. And I said this at the start of the race, the Audi is fantastic in qualifying, but the BMW seems to come stronger and stronger. It seems a little lighter on its tyres. And if you're light on your tyres on a day like this, with track temperatures have been 40, have been 42, but now, John, they're falling 37 degrees. Will that be a factor in the final laps of the race? Those that caned their tyres earlier on, will they suddenly find they're not falling away as much as they would have done if it stayed at 40 degrees? Certainly for a lot of the drivers, we heard from Carl Janssen earlier, just saying the tyres are unbelievable today. They're really, really suffering in the heat. And so suddenly this drop at the end of the race, will it favour the BMW more than the Audi? I can't tell you, but the BMW does come on strong through the latter stages of a 3-hour race. So we might have a sting in the tail yet.
Yeah, last 20 odd minutes. It's been a good run by Manfilter team, HTP, Winward, and Philip Ellis, who started that car back behind the wheel. Still predicting a 22-lap race, and that is the case. We've got 3 laps to go for the lead at the end of this one.
But John, do you remember not long ago it flipped over just at the point of the Sport Audi dived in after 16 laps? It went from 22 laps, suddenly 23 laps to go. They suddenly potentially had an extra lap, but now, if you're saying it's only going to be 22 laps, that's good for them. They don't want that extra lap.
No, absolutely right. Still this cracking battle on the Grand Prix circuit at the moment, as the top 2 in TCR head into the first hairpin cutout on the Grand Prix circuit. It will surprise you not at all to know that these guys can go to the end. Diogo Pinto started the Sim RC TCR car, gave it over to Jürgen Frank, who did a double, and now he's handed it to Felix. All right on the limit of that little 4-cylinder Audi, screaming away as they head up the hill. The modelling of the engine noise in all of these cars and the transmission noise, absolutely outstanding.
I tell you, that's been one of the many, many revelations to me, John. I can understand the visual excellence, but it's all the other extraneous factors. As we know, anybody who's only watched motor racing on the TV, when you go to a circuit, the visceral element, it's so important, the sound in motor racing. That's where it really comes into its own. So the fact they've got it so stupendously good, well done the VCO on this, in this event, is really a feather in their cap as far as I'm concerned.
Hats and back for this lead battle in TCR. Take the curbs, can here. Not too much though. A little mistake maybe by the leader. Sim RC car, which is just back ahead for the moment on the pit stop cycle. Where did the core car make up a little bit of time? Yes, it did, just a wee bit, and it's dragging up the hill. The 476 getting bigger to its driver. Up the inside at the top of the hill over the brow. That would be very brave indeed, and discretion is the better part of valor as they come through Schwedenkreuz and into Arenberg at the top of the foxhole, grounding out the bottom of the chassis as they head down through the foxhole. No hint of a lift there, and changing up the top gear, gathering speed on the downhill. You bottom out at the bottom of the hill, then up the hill. Little dab of the brakes, down change 1, down change 2, one more down change to come. There it is. Balance the car, front wheel drive. Oh, bit of dab of on and off the power there, and a short shift from the second place core car. Just trying to keep the car balanced in the weight transfer by using the throttle.
John, this battle at the front of TCR is fantastic. It could, though, be any lap of the race. This is what we've come to expect in this class between those two crews. But while this is happening, Alexander Voss was got to within 3.9 seconds of the race lead. I thought the Williams Audi could just cruise it to the end of this race. Not the case, unless GS Competition needs one more pit stop. Don't forget they stopped out of sync, they not after that early damage when Philip Eng was racing. But Alexander Voss, 4.1 seconds now down on Dominic Steib, lapping last time around a second and a bit faster than the race leader. So there's action in TCR, but there's very soon going to be even tighter action, one would think, at the front of the field, unless that number 189 BS Competition BMW does need to make a splash and dash at the end.
It's going to be tight for Voss. It's going to be tight for Voss. I don't know is the answer. I really don't know. BS Competition. They may. What have they got on Phil Ellis? They've only got 15 seconds on Phil Ellis in third, and Spengler's only 27 seconds further back. So to be honest, if they do have to pit, they're going to be off the podium. They might not even be in. They might not even be in the top 4. They might drop down to 5th if they do have to pit again. Voss doesn't seem to be saving fuel at the moment as we keep our eyes on the battle for the leading TCR.
You know the rule, John. Get rid of the fuel. It's only weighing the car down.
So, last 18 minutes to go, and we're talking about the last 2.5 laps, aren't we? It's when you have to recalibrate your mind and how you look at racing when you're on a lap that is so long. Still, oh, it's just gone back out to 23. 23 laps predicted. That, I think, is curtains for Voss. That's curtains for Voss if it does go to 23. And this prediction, the way the computer works, and this is our software that we use in the real world, it's extremely impressive. And actually, there are far fewer variables in the sim racing world than there are in the real world, because there's no code 60s or yellow flags here on the Nordschleife. So I think that's Voss's goose cooked, I'm afraid, Bruce. That'll push Phil Ellis up into second. Spengler's going to get on the podium here. And there's still a question mark, of course, over Dominic Steib and the Williams eSport team and whether they've done their full amount of driver changes. Both drivers have driven, but there was a rule, and certainly everybody else has abided by that here in this race. I've just checked through the top 15 cars, and they've all done 2 driver changes. It might be between just 2 drivers, but they've changed drivers over twice, and that's not the case of the leading car.
2 out and ins as far as the driver's concerned. So yes, exactly so, John, unless there's been some mistake that we haven't understood earlier on. But 4 seconds, 4.2 seconds, it's now stabilised, the gap between first and second. But as you say, Alexander Voss in the 189 BMW seemingly owes us one more stop. And with that swinging back to potentially 23 laps as a race distance rather than 22, means any chance surely they could have made it up without doing that extra stop have been taken away from them. But don't forget, it swung from 22 to 23 and back again. It could yet do that. It's so finely balanced, and you can imagine for Williams eSports, they're almost saying back it off a little bit, so we have to do one more lap.
Yeah, agreed. eSports are fine on fuel, no doubt there. Dominic Steib can come home. He pitted at the end of the end of lap 16. It's the end of lap 14 for Voss, so I think he can do 21, possibly 22. He can't do 23, surely. And it's dropped back to 22 again. It must be absolutely on the cusp. We'll keep an eye on that. Meantime, let's get back to the screaming 4-cylinder 2-litre battle at the front of TCR. Two Audis absolutely evenly matched. Michael Werner from the organisers. I'll come to that in a minute. Let's go back to what we're seeing here, with the hole in the air being punched by the yellow and black Audi that leads TCR. The core racing car in behind the Sim RC car comes out but just can't get the run. I think the problem is they run so close to their rev limiter that you can drag up behind Bruce, but there's actually no more revs to go by the car, even with the draft.
Really good point, Don, because I've watched on several occasions where we've been treated to an in-car cockpit shot in the TCR, and you see them hitting the rev limiter time and time again towards the end of the straight. There are no toys left in the cupboard.
Yeah. Right, let me go back to this situation at the front of the field. 2 driver changes in combination of how many drivers you've got, and a maximum driving time of 2 hours. Now, I would suggest, and this is unofficial, but our data is normally pretty good. I would suggest that I think they're okay on driving time, but I'm not seeing 2 swaps of drivers. Sammy Matty, 3 first stints, 7, 6, and I think I said 4, didn't I? 3. Yeah, 7, 6, and 3. So that's 16 laps. That's going to be pretty close to 2 hours. But what we'll assume that they haven't blown that one as well. And then, but Dominic's only done 1 stint. Again, that assumes that Dominic would have had to have done the 2nd stint to make this work. And I'm not sure he was in the car at that point, unless there's been some kind of waiver given by the organisers. That's what we're discussing at the moment. Let's leave race control to sort that one out, as the gap at the front of the field between Dominic and Alexander Voss has come down to 3 seconds. 2.9.
Right, John, here's a thought. 2.6 seconds now. Right, Alexander Voss in VS Competition BMW, we're fairly sure, as sure as we can be, has to make one more stop. Maybe Williams eSport team is banking on that, and they've decided they're going to make one as well and put Sammy Matty Trogan back in to get that 2nd driver change, but that relies on it going to 23 laps as predicted distance. But if those 2 come in, maybe that could tail it. That could become 22 laps. This could fall in the lap of Philip Ellis. And,
I think Ellis is in a great situation. Ellis started the race, did 6 laps, handed over to Jack Sedgwick, who did 6 laps, and then came in, put a new set of tyres on, did 6 more laps, Jack, and then handed over 2 laps ago to Phil Ellis. So unless they've got their calculations on fuel horribly wrong, Phil Ellis in the Manfilter HTP Winward car is right in the driving seat. He's got a great opportunity. Voss, he was last in at the end of lap 14. We're on lap 20 and about to complete lap 21 next time around, and that would, I've not seen anybody do more than 7 laps. Steib is fine on terms of fuel. He got in at the end of lap 16, so he should be okay, assuming he doesn't have to come in to put Sammy Matty in for 1 lap. Yeah, I can't believe they've forgotten that. I cannot believe they've forgotten that. No, I can't either, because how embarrassing would that be? We've got 11 minutes remaining in this race, just under. Alexander Voss knows he has to come in, because we haven't seen anyone go further than 7 laps. He'd have to do 9 laps if they last pitted on lap 14, and we do go to 23, or 8 laps, which no one else has done, if we go to 22 laps. So you'd have to say, for him, it's a chance to wave to the pit crew. But for Philip Ellis, who seems with the HTP Manfilter HTP Motorsport Mercedes, seems to have got this just spot on. In terms of pure speed, Dominic Steib, Williams eSport and his teammate Sammy Matty Trogan should have got the job done. But unless it's something we don't understand, which is eminently possible, but I'm not sure in this case, they have to come in. And it's the same with the Eng Voss car. Phil I forgot to mention that. Phil did a stint in a bit, and then Alexander Voss did a 7, and he'll do another 7. So Phil needs to get in to finish that car off. So that car does have to stop, and surely Phil Ellis will take it over again. Sorry, not Phil Ellis. Philip Eng. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think we knew he was going to have to do a stop. Annoyingly for them, there has to be a driver's change within it, and I believe the car's in now. Yes, just gone into pit lane.
Which one was that?
BMW from second place.
Right. Well, that's as much on fuel as anything else. And what have we got left in terms of the? Well, still predicting. Through goes Dominic Stives, gone through. Phil Ellis has gone through in second. Philip Eng is back in the BS competition, and he's come out in third, ahead of Bruno Spengler, who's yet to come. That must have been, well, I wonder if they didn't even put any fuel in there. So if they didn't, of course, if you don't put fuel in, then you don't have to put tyres on. So they've done a super quick stop at the end to get Philip Ellis back, to get Philip Eng, back in there. So it's Steib from Ellis, from Spengler, from Philip Eng, and that's your top 4. Christian Cronjes should be the next through. There he goes, and he's just passed Philip Eng as well, who is rolling again though. But Ellis just... Eng. I'm getting me Engs and me Ellis's mixed up. Philip Eng has dropped down to 5th position, I reckon now. So
he has. He's 4 and a bit seconds down on Christian Cronjes. So he, in fact, is the 3rd place BMW in the race. They're holding 3rd in the hands of Bruno Spengler, 4th in the hands of Christian Cronjes for Walkenhorst, and Philip Eng back out in 5th.
At the moment, we've got 3 different manufacturers in the top 3. Whew. At the end of this race, we'll have some wrap up for you, and hopefully a few interviews over on RS3 at 3 o'clock. It's the Football Rewind. Declan Brennan goes back to the golden age of soccer, when hair was longer, shorts were shorter, and fashion sense, well, there was none. And with the benefit of hindsight, he'll be looking back at the Championship playoff game between Charlton Athletic and Sunderland AFC at Wembley. One of the best games of football you've ever seen. That is at 3 o'clock over on RS3 in audio. I don't know is the answer. What are they going to do for Williams Esports? The fact that Ellis jumped in, they must have put a... What was the pit stop time for Ellis last time around? Because they had to put fuel in. There's no way they could have done the lap without putting fuel in. That was
Philip Eng, or PEs, it's the other one you're talking about, BS competition. Yeah. Philip Ellis isn't the man. But actually, I'm glad you mentioned Ellis there, John, because he's just taken, between friends, 2.8 seconds out of the race leader. Now 19 seconds down on Dominic Steib. But does the Williams Esport Audi need to come in to make that second driver change? Slower lap time. 7 minutes 57 from a car, the Williams Esport Audi, that could normally lap in 754s, 755s for a laugh. So are they trying to... Hold on, let's think about what they're trying to do to the clock, John. Are they trying to knock it back so they finish after 22 laps? Are they going to try and force the clock? What's your clock saying on the countdown? We've got 6 minutes remaining.
6 minutes.
But how much in terms of predicted laps? Are we going to 22 or 23?
It's sitting at the moment. I will refresh so that it's 22. So this
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
If they can drop their pace just a little bit, we know we're on the cusp. If they can make sure it ends after 22 laps, but then that still leaves the issue of the second driver change. They must know something.
I don't think they've got a panic as far as fuel's concerned, the Steib. They're fine. But they haven't done, and you can't do it after the checkered flag. They qualified far enough up the field that they would cross the line in the pit lane if time has run out. So they've got to get across the start-finish line before 0, because if the clock expires on this lap, this will become the last lap. You see what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, I've adjusted my clocks accordingly. So just remember, the gap now, Dominic Steib in the Williams eSport Audi, 18.3 seconds clear of Philip Ellis in the Manfilter Team HCP Mercedes, and last time around there was a near 3-second gap between them. So in terms of the increment closing, Philip Ellis hasn't got enough up his sleeve, however hard he presses, whether it's 22 laps in this race or 23. But certainly 4.5 minutes remaining. Dominic Steib leading. It's not coming down a great deal. It is coming down a tiny bit. What isn't coming down is the gap between the TCR runners. They're still nose to tail. Felix Luding still holding off Marius Golenbeck. 0.3 of a second. One slip up from either of these and their race is going to be compromised. And we just adore the TCR class. Always so entertaining. Always so super close. But Felix Luding, he's not just quick. He's very, very good at defending. Let's see if he can make it last to the finish.
I'm astounded at how this Sim RC, TCR and Core Sim Racing battle has been going. Golenbeck and Felix Luding. So it's Sim RC leading it at the moment as they head out onto the Nordschleife. Just checking that there's no issue with those guys in terms of their stints. I don't think there are. No, they've both been in for a relatively short amount of time. So I just can't believe that Williams Esports would have got this wrong at the head of the field. But
no, you certainly think not. You might say their mind could have been drawn by obviously the news that broke. Was it yesterday morning? Indeed, yes. The Williams team, Formula One team, potentially up for sale after £13 million loss last year. But though Williams is very, very close to its esports team, on feels they run as separate entities, but one under the wing of the other. But right now, 17.7 seconds is the gap between first and second. Philip Ellis, he might be doing this in vain, but he's pressing on really hard. But Dominic Steib, lapping again comfortably, 7 minutes 57. Has he done enough? It looks so he has. Philip Eng setting some cracking lap times as he's 2.2 seconds down on Christian Cronjes, the BS competition BMW catching the Walkenhorst car, and the best of BMWs in third place is another 13 seconds up the track. But Eng is absolutely flying.
Gareth Evans should be on holiday this week. His wife Sarah on the first day of a week of staycation, trying to make the best of it. Gareth, thanks for tuning in. Make sure you spend plenty of time with Sarah this week. Looks like you're going to have some nice weather for it here in the UK. Another cracking, hot, sunshiny start to a month. We already smashed the sunshine hours records for May. I think the best since records began was about 500, and up until yesterday it was over 570 hours of sunshine. And, we've still got today as well, of course. Philip Ellis comes through. So did Steib go through to start the 22nd lap and final lap? Yes, he did. So they have not done the pit stop. Ellis goes through in second. Steib is on the Grand Prix circuit.
Well,
and now we're getting the news.
Laps,
we're getting the news. The Williams eSport will be disqualified after the race for driver share infringement. So we were right, and they have got it wrong. So the first car on the road taken out of the conversation. It's a massive slip up for Williams eSports, Sammy Matty Trogan, and that means that the Manfilter Team HTP team, the number 48 of Phil Ellis, who is bringing the car home, and Jack Sedgwick, who did the middle stint, is now race. I mean, at the word from race control, they've checked the same information. Reluctant to be sure about it, just in case we'd had a glitch in our system. But I've got to tell you, our software is seldom wrong. And so the last lap starts now. What was interesting to me, as time elapses now, well, I was wondering if controlled the race from second, but they were still. Horse Motorsport. So still 3 different manufacturers. I know that's 2 BMWs, isn't it? And then BS are in 4th, then Falcon Horse, then Race Union, then E-Team WRT, then Phoenix. And it looks like Vodafone Team GetSpeed, who had that disconnect and loss of 1 minute 45, are going to be in the top 10 by the end of this, as Fabian Schiller can bring that car home. Controversy, well, no, I was going to say controversy. It's not controversy, it's just shock for me.
Well, it is, but you know, John, they might have misunderstood the rules, but there's nothing new in the 2 driver changes. I'm beginning to wonder if the point in the race they decided Sami Matti-Trogen was going to do the first half or thereabouts, then Dominic Steib. What happens at that point if Dominic Steib suddenly has a glitch, can't connect? You put Sami Matti-Trogen back in, but at that point they still knew they had to come in and make the second driver change. Yes, it cost them the lead of the race, but they could have probably done it and come back out and finished second. But now they're going to end up, as you suggested, John, potentially disqualified, which in my reckoning is 0 points
Correct.
for their championship challenge, as opposed to the points for second or third.
Confirmed from race control, it is a disqualification, not a demotion or a time penalty. DISQ, not DISCO, DISQO, as far as they're concerned. So it's going to be a maiden victory then for Team HTP, and Philip Ellis can keep it on the island, and he's got traffic to lap as well. What a run it's been from he and Jack Sedgwick did at the middle ground. Absolutely brilliant stuff from them.
Well, they've never been on the podium, John. 4th, 5th, 5th, now 1st in the last 4 rounds. So impressive up swing in their performance, and they've run this very well indeed. Yes, you could say it should have been a second place, but rules are rules, because in terms of outright pace, Williams eSport has it. And the fact is, after 3 hours, or next closest thing, they're 18 seconds clear. That shows their overall pace, but without that second driver change, changes the whole complexion.
Now,
by the way, new fastest lap of the race, Alex Arana. Well, he's only 18th in class for the Mahler Racing team, so it's a consolation element that shows the drivers are proud. They'll press on regardless, but they were removed from proceedings by the BS competition BMW at the end of lap 2, and they've never been able to come back. They had to have extra pit stops to have the damage, of which there was a whole lot sorted out, and there was no chance they could come back from there, but they've driven very well ever since.
It's an extraordinary thing for those guys who were at the front of the field. Bruno Spengler is going to get another podium with his team 107, the team BMW bank entry for Bruno and Neil Scott. Did Kai Kashuba get in the car today, Bruce?
Not that I've seen, John.
No, I didn't see that either. I'll have a quick look down. No, he didn't. It was Bruno to Nils to Bruno, so they're okay. I'm now, of course, checking everybody and making sure that there's no other issues. Falcon Horse have done Pittard to Michaels. However, there was two Scots and a Sam in there, so that's all right. The TCRs then are starting their final lap by dint of being well behind the leaders. We've still got a full lap of TCR action, so we'll be watching that after the leaders have come through. Remember, Dominic Steib still scored in the lead, but the driver time error, or the driver mix error, I'm not sure whether they went over 2 hours as well. It must have been close, to be honest, with how much Sami Matti did at the beginning. So you pays your money, you takes your choice there. They may have bust out on a couple there. It could be time, but certainly they've not done the 2 driver changes. Well, what an eventful race. What an eventful race. Martin Asher with 7.6 seconds of a lead on Claudius Feed now, with Jano Buchmann in 3rd. So that's Asher, Sim RC and German Sim Racing 1st, 2nd and 3rd in the 911 Cup class. For the 718 Club Sports, it's Zog Rennsport in second. Core Sim Racing lead at Matti Sipala. The 303 from Christian Bug and Zog Rennsport 333, and the 397 from Team RSO Manuel Weibel. And in TCR, Felix Lüdig still with just 0.2 of a second between himself, and been keeping the weather eye on that, and Marius Golenbeck. Marcus T in third is 15 seconds further back, and he's only got 3 seconds on Lucas Müller as they've just started their final lap.
We may yet have another change for position, because Philip Eng, BS Competition BMW, is all over the tail of Christian Cronjes. It's walk and horse ahead of BS Competition, fighting for the final position on the podium.
Yes, good point. That is for overall third position with, as we know now, Dominic Steib, who's on the Dottinger Höhe, broken the driver regulations, and you know, even if they'd done a quick stop, they had fuel, they didn't have to put tyres on, they might have still been on the podium. Checkered flag is out as time has elapsed, and on the road Williams Esports come across, flash. Dominic Steib doesn't know. Dominic Steib does not know. He's quit straight out, so maybe he has been told. So it is going to be the maiden victory for Jack Sedgwick, who did the middle stint, and bringing it home after starting and qualifying. Philip Ellis wins for Manfilter, Team HTP Winward, and AMG take the victory in round 5. The Mahler 3 hours here at the Nurburgring Langstrecken Series, powered by VCO. And side by side on the run to the Tiergarten for the final podium position, Christian Cronjes has Philip Eng almost in the car with him. The two Z4s getting very squirrely indeed. Eng tries to get the power down, pushing on, but it's going to be Valkenhorst who takes 4th position. Spengler's already gone through as close as you like. He swings out across the line, gets a bit of an overlap, but just doesn't make it. 0.3 of a second between 3rd and 4th position, and the timing has already been amended. So Steib now shown in P1 with the Sami Matti Trogan car, and Steib rather taken out of the results. So the margin of victory, 15 seconds between Williams Esports and Manfilter Team HTP Winward. Team BMW Bank in 3rd position ahead of Christian Cronjes, and Manfilter winning from Team BMW Bank in 2nd, Valkenhorst in 3rd, and BS Competition in 4th. And still the TCRs continue to battle. They've got about half a lap to go. They're down at the bridge at Adna, heading up now, starting that long climb that ends up. Oh, and the leaders had a huge moment there, running right over the curb as they came out of the bridge section. Now has Lüding lost so much that it's going to give an opportunity through the right-hander at the bottom of the hill. And now Golenbeck, this is an opportunity. These cars produce a lot of downforce, very aero dependent, and you can start to move the car around. He's got the draft. Golenbeck looks one way, looks the other, goes to the left, goes to the right. Now running up the hill, trying to get an advantage. We've seen 2 TCR cars side by side here at various points of the race. Leader has finished. We've got the winners in Porsche Cup as well. That's going to be Asher Racing from Sim RC, from German Sim Racing. And in the GT4 class, it looks like Core Sim Racing have come across the line as well. But TCR very much still up for grabs as they head up to the carousel for the final time. Well, we promised you 3 hours of excitement in this Mahler 3 Stunden, and we're over-delivering here. We're into overtime, and when you and Johnny do these races for real, Bruce Jones, this is exactly what we've been used to seeing.
It absolutely is, and you know, this could be lap 2 of the race. It's as it happens, it's lap 22, 23, 22 for them at the moment, but it's so super close. what we've seen the last few laps, each of them have made mistakes. It must be said, fewer mistakes by the lead driver, Felix Luding, but Marius Golombek is throwing everything at him. He's got, a third of the lap remaining. Can he crack this? This is a very hard nut to crack, because Felix Luding for Sim RC is just a man on top of his game.
Still a third of the lap to go, and there's a couple of paces that you would say between here and the checkered flag are prime overtaking manoeuvres down at Brunchen. Probably not one of them. That's where they are now.
Yes, you don't put your hand up at the start of the day saying, you know what, I'll probably make a passing move at Brunchen, particularly when these drivers are right on the ragged edge. But the important thing is Luding is keeping very tidy lines. He's made a couple of mistakes recently, but for every mistake he makes, Golombek has made 2 in his anxiety to get past. But Golombek is so dogged sitting in behind there.
Over the top of the rise and into the fastest middle part of the circuit. Again, all about momentum, starting to build speed towards the Flansgarden and down in towards the last quarter of the lap. There's possibly a little chance as they come down into the braking area for the Swallow's Tail, but no, can't be done. Now into the Kleiner Carousel, so it's going to be the run down the Dottinger Hall. Oh, huge air from the leading TCR car. Felix Luding kicking the left rear wheel high off the ground as he was spat out of the Kleiner Carousel, possibly a little earlier, but he was getting the power on so early it's not quite. Oh, and a little tap of the brake there, right in the middle of the Gallows Hill corner, and that forced a lift up from Marius Golombek as well. And Golombek now with the opportunity to drag up. He will drag up, there's no doubt in my mind that he will, but has he got revs?
Luding played a few little tricks there into the Kleiner Carousel. He actually braked a bit earlier than normal. Then he almost accelerated through the corner, and that certainly caught out. And as you said, coming out onto Dottinger Höhe, he took a different tactic, but the pull is enormous, the toe is massive. Is it going to be a final change on the last lap? Let's see.
Side by side, and we've not seen them side by side through Bilstein, down into the dip, and the Audi on the right hand side may just have the advantage as they come in core. This is the last lap, there's 3 corners to go, and they're still side by side all the way through the Tiergarten. Once, twice they touch, but Core's in the lead, and now it's the dash to the line. And can the yellow and black car get back around? I don't think so. Magnificent stuff. He pulls out of the slipstream. He's got a bit of an overlap, but it's Core that takes it right at the death. Magnificent stuff from Golombek. Golombek absolutely timed that perfectly to be able to get around the leader. We've seen so many times that you could drag up to them but not get by. Swung to the right hand side through the Bilstein kink there, and then toughed it out. There was a couple of little touches, but nothing I think that will be looked at, Bruce. That was good, hard, fair racing, and the Core car was in the right position when it counted.
Yeah, they really sort of respected each other. Yes, they clashed, but Golombek had a better run up the straight and again used that TCR toe. I think right at the end that we saw Luding hanging on. I talked about him being smooth, but that was fantastic fighting.
Well, that means we can wrap up the results for you in a second or two. We're going to try and get some drivers for you as well with the controversy that's going on. Our German colleagues talking to some of the drivers first of all, and I'll just wait to see them pop up into our waiting room. Confirmation, by the way, at the head of the field. 2 driver changes in combination with a maximum driver time of 2 hours, and that was what was broken by the leading Williams eSports car. Asher Racing, Martin Asher bookended the run to the win for the Porsche Cup 2 class, and the black AR car then holding sway over the Sim RC Cup 2 car, the yellow and black car, with also the Asher Lug. German Sim Racing in 3rd position. Now here's the run to the line for the 718s. I've just seen Jack Sedgwick in there. Let's get him in and say hello to Jack Sedgwick. Jack, stand by just a second. We're just going to bring the 718 Club Sport winner across the line and give them their due recompense as Matty Sipler comes across for Sim Racing 2 and wins the Club Sport GT4 category for core sim racing. Jack Sedgwick, congratulations. The best ever finish for the HTP Winwood team, the man-filter HTP Winwood team, and it's a victory for you and your teammate. Well done.
Yeah, thanks. I can't really put it into words, my heart's pounding.
Were you aware of what was going on at the front of the field when Phil was doing his last stint? We'd sort of picked up on it, but we weren't sure whether we had the right numbers on the timing. And were you able to tell Phil that, or did you just leave him to his own devices?
Yeah, we had an idea. We weren't too sure on the driving time, but with the driver swap, we were pretty sure.
I think they pushed out on both, to be honest. I think they probably went over 2 hours. I haven't actually looked down to the minute yet, but certainly there was only one driver change. So, and did you tell Phil then?
Yeah, we kept him up to date. Obviously kept him pushing, just in case. But come the last lap, when it was pretty certain that they would be disqualified, we just cruised to the end then, really.
And that was a great run. Lap stints here, a little bit shorter than we've seen before. I know that there was some fuel changes for some of the classes. Did the GT3s get a fuel change as well, or was that just down to the tyre life?
I don't think we got a fuel change for this race, but it was mainly down to the tyre life.
Yeah, you guys were doing 6s and 7s, and we have seen 8s before from the GT3s.
Yeah, and we only did 6s today, because for us that 7th lap is pretty slow.
Right. Well, it paid off, mate.
So yeah.
Absolutely.
It worked out.
Absolutely paid off. Wish you all the best, Jack, and give our best to Phil as well. That was a cracking stint from both of you. You worked really well together, and we'll see you in the next one.
Cheers, and thanks for everything you've done for this series. It's been amazing.
It's been an absolute pleasure, but thanks for mentioning it. The whole team have really enjoyed this. Thanks, Jack Sedgwick. It's a win for Man-Filter Team HTP Winwood. Fantastic stuff from them. And just a confirmation, SP9 then, first Man-Filter, second BMW Bank, third Valkenhorst Motorsport. In the TCR category, in the Cup 2 category rather, Asher Racing from Sim RC, from German Sim Racing. Only 30 seconds between the podium finishers there, which was just great as well. And we can actually speak to one of the GT4 drivers, the Porsche GT4 drivers as well, in just a second. In Cup 3, Core Sim Racing win it. Matty Sipler brought it to the line. His teammate has joined us in the booth, Patrick Kabinji. Patrick, congratulations. Excuse me, it's not Patrick at all. It's Sindre Setsas. I'm looking at the wrong part of my screen. Sorry about that, Sindre. Congratulations, another great run for you guys.
No problem. Yeah, it was a good race. Carl put it on pole. He messed up his first lap. Track temp got a bit hotter, so I don't think we probably should have had pole with the conditions we had. But Carl put out a mega lap to put us on pole, and we never really looked back from then. We did everything perfectly today, and even accounting for the extra lap, which we got in the end there, with Williams getting DQ'd over the line, which was kind of unexpected. We thought we won it, but one more lap and it was fine for Matty because we had the fuel to do it, so it was good.
I think we've got Carl in here as well. We've talked about your qualifying before, Carl. It's so important to be at the sharp end of the field in those early laps, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. It just helps out with getting away a bit and getting into the track a bit more. And also, like you saw in the opening lap of the GT4 field, there was a crash in turn 1, and if you're first, then you pretty much have the smallest risk of getting into a crash.
And in terms of how the race panned out, Sindra, I mean, were you just basically trying to keep that speed up and keep the consistency?
Yeah, that was the target. We had the gap of, I think it was around 15 seconds when I was driving, and it was more a case of trying to manage that rather than trying to extend it, because extending it would mean more risk, and it just minimizing risk was kind of the priority from like lap 8 onwards. So yeah, it was good that Carl did the start he did, because it allowed us, both me and Matti, to take less risk and bring it over the line in first.
Well, Matty's joined us as well now. Hot that we're watching, but you guys, the pressure's on when you're at the front of the field, and you know, you've in some respects have got the most pressure. Your two teams have done their bit, and you don't want to let them self down. Hi, Matty.
Yeah. There was some internet connection issues. I think I couldn't hear everything.
Stint for you, a lot of pressure on you, taking over in the lead.
Yeah, it was just all about taking it home and keep some pace up, so I wouldn't do any silly mistakes.
How was the tyre wear today? We normally see that, you know, you can push pretty well all the way through the stint. A little bit less fuel today meant your stints were a bit shorter, probably just as well with the high temperatures.
Yeah, I did the longest stint on tires, and I think we still had about 70% left after 9 laps. So the tires weren't an issue today, and not for us at least. I think the GT3 cars have it a bit worse with tires.
Well, another fabulous run for you guys in the 303. Carl, Matty, Sindra, thanks for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, fellas.
Yeah, thanks the same.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Great to have the guys with us. Just checking whilst I was doing those interviews, I think sadly for our culinary delights, Bruce, another car that's fallen foul of the 2 driver changes is the Schnitzelam Racing AMG GT 3 in 11th position. I'm looking at that now, and I've only got 1 driver stop, and I've also got a feeling that they went over, Marcel Markovic went over the 2 hours as well, so I think they're going to lose that 11th position. An extraordinary run to the line and the victory finally for an AMG GT3. I don't think we've even had an AMG on the podium this season so far, have we?
I might have to do some quick maths on that one. No, 4th and 5th by and large have been their sort of area of expertise. No, and in fact, take the HTP Winwood car. It's had round 2, 4th place, then 5th, and now 1st. So yeah, definitely big setup. And I thought Jack Sedgwick was very, very modest there. You know, he sort of really downplayed his role, very quietly spoken, but between them, they really put in some fantastic laps there. But one does wonder at what point that information came through. They might have had their hunch, but like us, they were busy doing their racing, and you don't always have time to go chasing the story. But yeah, great to have the mix of cars. And as you said, we ended up with Mercedes, BMW, but for the problem, it would have been Audi, Mercedes, BMW. So again, the variety at the front of the field is exactly what we'd want, John.
And it worked so well for them. A 45-second gap in the end between them and the Team BMW Bank entry, the 107 car. Brinosh Benga and Niels Koch, no Kai Kashuba in that car today, and they've been, I mean, so consistent across the season in terms of their finishing. Another podium for the 107 car, and sometimes they've carved out those finishes from slightly more lowly starting positions.
Yes, I mean, what we tend to have had so far this year, John, is a couple of cars really seemingly on the pace at the front, and then those behind.
Beim Start natürlich das übliche Spielchen Kämpfe vorne im Mittelfeld, im Hinterfeld, überall ging es zur Sache. Wer sich gedreht hat, der am Anfang war David Peter, der hatte dadurch natürlich einiges verloren. In der Cup 2-Klasse, der Porsche-Fahrzeuge, da ging es ein bisschen dazu, aber nicht ganz so.
Contact between the cars is a tribute to all concerned, because as we said, particularly for those that aren't regular sim racers, the hardest thing is racing side by side. And though we did have some incidents, it was remarkably well controlled yet again.
I just wonder what the thoughts of Agustin Canapino and Alex Arena is, because they certainly had the pace again. Canapino put a fantastic qualifying lap in, and then that incident so early on, which effectively took them out of the running, not of their making, we should say, and that's going to really stir the championship up a little bit.
Yes, it will, but they were sitting on a tidy lead. Of course, like the VLN or the NLS as we call it, the points system is very strange, because listen to this, they led with a total of 36.78 points to lead the championship, 26.07 for Team Hoisink-Belt. They didn't score well today, so the Mahler Racing team ought to still be at the top of the pile, but for Alex Arana, who actually I just noticed set the fastest lap of the race on the final lap, they're still leading the championship, but they could have been stretching clear. They would have been good for possible win today, certainly a podium, and that was taken away from them with all the damage at the end of lap 2. Really unfortunate for them.
Thanks very much to Bruce Jones, as the 5th round of the DNLS powered by VCO, the Mahler 3-hour race, decided on a disqualification, driver time and driving infringement on the driver swaps. Has taken the race away from the car that went across the line first. Team Williams Esports will be disappointed that they've made that mistake, but for every dark cloud, there is a silver lining, and this week the silver lining is for Manfilter's HTP Winward Racing, who have the first victory for them and for an AMG GT3 this season. Bruce Jones and John Hindhaugh were the voices. Tim Gray in London. Thanks to Connery and the rest of the production team, particularly Michael and Nico. We'll be doing it again later on in the season, as it's beginning to hot up at the top of the DNLS Championship, powered by VCO. Bye-bye.
Und dann 3 Stunden digitalen Motorsport ins Best nochmal genießen. Bis dahin, Olli, wünschen wir allen schöne Pfingsten.
Ja, würde ich auch sagen, es war ein tolles Rennen heute, ein toller Event. Und mir hat es riesig Spaß gemacht. Ich hoffe, euch auch draußen am Monitor, und dann sehen wir uns in 2 Wochen wieder.
Möge der Grip mit euch sein, schöne Pfingsten und bis in 2 Wochen. Tschüss und auf Wiedersehen.
Boah, Scheiße. Mensch, war das schön.